I'd like to gavel in our meeting schedule for today is December 1st, 2014. If you'd all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper.
I don't know why we're going in
Alderman
closed session.
Well, can we do roll call
okay.
first?
Sorry.
Alderman Nguyen.
Here.
Alderman Robertson. Alderman Kramer. Alderman Tui.
Here.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderman Manister.
Here.
Alderman Saunders.
Here.
And Alderman Harper is present as well. We have a scheduled executive session for 6:45 for a personnel matter and would like to talk to the board about. So if I get a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second. And roll call, please.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Manister.
Yes.
Alderman Saunders.
No. We don't know why.
Well, if I said why, it wouldn't be an executive session.
Well, I know, but
Okay,
there's
so
issues where
we'll
we
go
were
in
going.
executive session in the back conference room. We'll be fine. Okay. All right, is this on now, Kevin? Okay, there we go. All right, thank you. We are back in regular session. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda for the regular Board of Alderman meeting for December 1st, 2014. Are there any changes to the agenda? Alderman Leahy.
Your Honor, I'd like to take Bill 5896 off hold,
Okay.
and I would like to have Bill 5941 placed on hold.
Removed. We're going to change the whole thing. It has to be changed, so just remove.
Yeah, all right, to remove completely?
We have the wrong name in bill number 5941. So, okay, do we have a second? So this is
Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion, we have a motion to remove bill number 5986 from hold and put bill number 5941 to be removed from the agenda. Okay.
I just had a question on two
Okay,
other
go ahead.
bills. Is that okay? The two that are on hold, are we leaving those on hold, the sign and the flood?
Well, usually we take them when we get to the ordinances, so
They're still written according to the old code, and we adopted the new code last meeting. So they're not, the chapter numbers aren't the same.
5919 will stay on hold. 5932 will also stay on hold.
They need to be redrafted so that they coincide with the new code, because right now the chapter numbers in that coincide with the old code. So they need to be
that's fine.
redrafted.
Okay. So we have a motion to remove 5896 from hold and to remove bill number 5941. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. If I can have a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved, Your Honor.
And second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item, consideration approval from the minutes from the regular Board of Alderman meeting, November 17, 2014. Any changes?
Wait a minute.
I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
So moved.
And second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next, presentation and recognitions. First of all, I would like to make the first presentation, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, and to Gina. And Gina, if you would like to come forward. I'd just like to, on behalf of the City of Brentwood, present this to you, Gina, and it's well-deserved. This is an award from the Award of Financial Reporting and Achievement to Gina Jarvis, Financial Director, City of Brentwood, Missouri. The Award of Financial Reporting Achievement is presented by the Government Finance Officers Association to individuals designated as instrumental in their government unit achieving a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. The Certificate of Achievement is presented to those government units whose annual financial reports are judged to adhere to the program's standards and represent the highest award in government financial reporting. And this was sent on November 4th, 2014. So, congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly. Thank you, Board of Aldermen. I just want to thank you all very much for the recognition and also for your continued support. This award actually should be presented to everyone here at the city. Everybody at Brentwood works hard every day to do things right and do everything to the best of their abilities. I wanted to thank BOLA and the management team for their support and their patience as we've made many changes in our financial procedures to get to this point. I thank you very much for that. It's been a slow and deliberate process. We still have more to do, but I'm very pleased with our progress thus far, and I just wanted to thank you again for your recognition. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Gina. Next, we have a presentation by Jim Leahy, who is with Stifel and has been our public finance consultant for a number of years. Jim?
Yes, good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I think everybody does. I am Jim Leahy, Managing Director in Public Finance at Stifel. And I just want to talk about a few things that I think would be, and share some information with you. Just by way of background, I've had the pleasure of working with the city since 1997. I mean, it's amazing to me to think back to it, but it goes back to 1997. I joined Stifel in '89, and I also, for some of you may not be aware, I worked in government for about 15 years. So I've never been an elected official, but I have been on the government side, so I appreciate the job that you all have to do. A few weeks ago, I called BOLA, and I asked her if I could attend an upcoming meeting of the Board of Aldermen and share some information on some of your projects and TIFs and things like that, and certainly share my perspective on your economic development efforts that go back a long time. And again, I want to emphasize, no one asked me to be here. I called BOLA and asked her if I could come and share some thoughts with you. And the reason I wanted to do that, truthfully, is I wanted to congratulate all of you, kind of following in Gina's comments, congratulate all of you for a really, in my opinion, an unbelievable job. Keep in mind that I'm in public finance, so the clients that I'm dealing with every day are cities like Brentwood. I work almost exclusively on economic development projects. That's what I do. We have people in our department that work with school districts and colleges and universities. What I focus on is almost completely our development projects. That's my area of expertise. And so when I say the things I'm going to say, I'm basing it on my perspective and what I've seen out there. And so I really want to congratulate all of you for your efforts to revitalize the city, really going back in my tenure, going back to the mid-'90s. In my opinion, what all of you have accomplished, certainly in this region, but I would argue nationally, is precedent setting. I've never seen anything like it. It's an amazing thing. You guys are so close to it. You live here. Many of you this is your home. And I think it's easy to lose perspective a little bit when you're so close to it. And you're fighting the battles of these projects and working on zoning issues and planning issues. There's a lot involved, and it's easy to kind of lose your perspective. But let's go through some facts. You've used and facilitated at least 5 tax increment financings, okay? Brentwood Square, Point, Promenade, Hanley Station, Meridian Eager, okay? There have been at least 5 transportation development districts, okay? Again, Strasner, Hanley Eager, the Point, Hanley Station, and now the Drury, which is not a bond issue, but it's a transportation development district. And you were involved and are involved in a regional transportation development district. As all of you probably know, the Hanley Road Corridor Transportation Development District, which is a partnership with the city of Maplewood and St. Louis County, by the way. That led to about $20 million, by the way, in project improvements, not only in the city of Brentwood, the jug handle as we refer to it, and other project improvements. And that's a sales tax, a cooperative effort. And that was one of the first times anywhere that there's been a regional transportation development district. So again, there's one in Poplar Bluff now, and there are a couple of others, but that was precedent setting in my judgment. One of the points I also want to make is that please understand that but for, and that's the key words, but for the use of these tools, the city would not have attracted these developments, in my opinion, nor the investments from companies like Drury, Nordstrom's, I'm not going to name them all, Trader Joe's, Target, Golf Galaxy, Deerberg's, Pace Properties, Sansone Music. You go down the line. I mean, these companies have invested in your community. That's private dollars being invested in your community. In my opinion, the city is now home to one of two major regional shopping areas in this area, the other one being the Chesterfield Valley. No denying that is certainly a regional shopping area. I can tell you from being at the ICSC meetings, from talking to developers, from talking to people, retailers directly, anytime somebody thinks about coming into St. Louis, they first inquire about those two areas. What's available in Brentwood? What's available in Chesterfield? They want to be at those two areas. Shoppers come, you know this better than I because you see the data, but shoppers come from long distances on a regular basis to shop in the city of Brentwood. That's new tax dollars coming into your community. The financial commitments, and this is important, and I think all of you know this, but I'm going to share some facts with you. For 3 of the 5 TIFs that I mentioned, your financial commitment ended significantly before the expiration of the 23-year TIF life. And in that case, I'm specifically referring to Promenade, the Square, and the Point. Here's the first fact, and this is an understated number, but we have calculated the amount of dollars that we're going to pay off those TIF obligations. So each year we took payments in lieu of taxes, the real estate taxes. You took the sales taxes called EATS. It's an acronym. Most economic activity taxes is what it stands for. Took those revenues, and those revenues were used to pay interest on the bonds, and then with excess monies, they were used to pay off the bonds, the principal on the bonds. And now that those 3 are gone, Promenade, Point, and Square, what that means to the taxing districts, okay, to the city of Brentwood included, but all the taxing districts, and I think this is a conservative number, but it's our calculation, $10.6 million per year. $10.6 million. So in 10 years, that's over $100 million going to the taxing districts. So I think that's an important factor that I wanted to share with you. Let's talk about the Promenade, and I don't want to bore you with a bunch of numbers and details, but I want to get it out there, and you can certainly follow up if Bull has questions or anybody has questions. I'll be glad to follow up after this meeting and give you some more information. But just hear me on Promenade quickly. Those bonds were issued, $26.3 million issued in February of '98. Okay? The interest rate on those bonds was 6%. Those bonds were refunded in '02, which was a key to getting it paid off early. Though the interest rates went from 6% to 1.4 to 4.70. There was a range of interest rates. Okay? All the bonds were fully retired in March of 2010, which is more than 9 years earlier than the expiration of that TIF, which was June of 19. Okay? So 9 years. 9 years early on Promenade. Square. $15,660,000 issued in October of 2001. Interest rate 570. Those bonds were refunded in '05 with interest rates of 320 to 450. So we went from 570 to 320 to 450. which meant that all the bonds were fully retired in February of 2014. Okay? 8 years and 3 months earlier than the end of that TIF, which was May of 2022. So we had Promenade 9 years, Square 8 years and 3 months early. Point. Those bonds were issued in December of 2009 with an interest rate of 5.65. They were refunded in 2005 with interest rates of 3% to 4.50. Those bonds, and most of you know because it's very recent, those bonds were fully retired in October, just a couple of months ago, which is about 8.5 years earlier than the TIF life there, which is July of 2023. That leaves two TIFs that I haven't talked a lot about. That's Hanley Station and the Meridian Eager, which you know a lot about for various reasons. But let's start with the Hanley Station. Hanley Station, those bonds were issued in February of 2008, $8,785,000, with an interest rate of 5.50. They have not been refunded. Those bonds are expected to fully retire, and I'll tell you our assumptions we're using, by May of 2025. And that assumes no growth in the current trailing 12 months of revenues. So if you look at the last 12 months of revenues, and we assume they always stay the same, those bonds are retired by May of 2025. The TIF ends September 14th of 2026. So that looks like, based on the conservative assumptions there, it'll be about 1.5 years early on Hanley Station. Meridian Eager, different story, more complicated story, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad story. These things happen when you have as many TIFs and you have as many projects going on. I guess it's inevitable that sometimes one may not perform as we expected. But on that one, those bonds were issued in September of 2004 with an interest rate of 5.10, and that was for phase one only, remember. The bonds were refunded with a variable rate, which we all know, and secured by a letter of credit from Compass Bank, which we know. That issue included phase two monies as well. And all of those bonds will be fully retired by May of 2025. This assumes no growth in the current 12 months. I'm sorry. All those bonds will be retired by the end of the TIF life. I misspoke. Yeah. By December of 2023, not 25. December of 2023. So those are your TIFs. You, as I mentioned, you've facilitated a lot of transportation development districts. You've received ratings on some of these bonds. The Brentwood Point TIF bonds were rated A-, which is A is about as high as you could get on a TIF bond, and you got an A-. Those bonds are gone now. But I'm pleased. You can see the trend, in my opinion, because what's happening with these development projects, Bola and Gina knows this, and thanks to all of you, because this is a compliment to all of you. It really is. I hope you take it that way. We heard last week from Standard & Poor's on your rating for the certificates of participation. They're going to be issued later this month. And I'm really pleased to report that Standard & Poor's affirmed the city's GEO rating of AA and provided a AA- rating on the COPs. And the reason for the minus, because that's really a lease, and the way rating agencies look at it, they give you a notch lower on a lease. It's not anything the city did right or wrong. It's just they usually make it a notch lower than the city's rating. Keep in mind, those ratings put the city of Brentwood in, I'm guessing, and I think I'm going to be pretty close, in the top 15 to 20% of ratings of cities nationally. So don't take that rating for granted. That's a very strong rating. And in my opinion, based on the current reserves and future-looking financial picture of the city and where these TIFs are and what's happening, I think the city has a chance to get to achieve a AAA rating in the next 3 to 5 years, and that would put you in the top 5% nationally. So if you were to do that, so I know, again, I said earlier, I know, and I don't want to talk longer. I know you've got a big agenda, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. And if you have follow-up questions, I'll be glad to answer them. But I just wanted to congratulate all of you again for for a job very well done. I know all of you don't think it's over. You have a lot of work to be accomplished, and I know that, and I respect that. But it really is an extraordinary accomplishment, and I just wanted to, I've worked with you for a long time, and this is no reflection. I don't take it that this is a reflection of Stiefel or Gilmore and Bell or any of your consultants that you use. It's a tribute to what you guys have done, what you've made happen. So I just wanted to, express that to you and thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thanks. Anybody have any questions, Jim? Andy?
Jim, my question is yes, we brought in $10 million additional from the sales. How is all of the TIFs, since they're now being paid off, how is that helping the school district and getting them funded?
I'm going to use my hands. I like to use my hands when I explain things. So a TIF is a tax increment. There's an increment. My hand represents the base, bless you, the base before the development occurred, okay? Yep. This was the real estate taxes, my hand. So now, once you approved the TIF and we were using the excess above my hand to retire bonds, okay? That's where it was going, to retire bonds. Bonds are gone now. So now, in the school district, because that's who you're asking about, so the school district was continuing to receive the base. No increase, just the base. Now that the TIF bonds are gone, there's no base anymore. So now the taxes are up here, above my hand. All those monies are flowing into all the taxing districts, including the school district. And school districts are funded, as you know, not by sales taxes, they're funded by property taxes. So they're getting those monies. I didn't do a calculation. We'd be happy to do that. Pat's asked me in the past, what a particular taxing district is getting. It's not an easy calculation. There's a lot involved to it, but we could certainly do that if you want us to look really what your school district is getting now, because we could do that.
If I may request it, I don't know if
I can give you one, because we did calculate it, but the promenade prior to the redevelopment, the entire 27 acres was paying a total of $60,000 a year in property taxes to all the taxing districts. About half of that went to the school district, so $30,000 a year. So that was frozen in '96 when the TIF was started, not when the bonds were issued, but when the TIF started. And after those bonds were paid off, it's generating almost $1 million a year in property taxes, of which half of that goes to school district, which is about $500,000 the first year is paid off. So it's quite a jump in 12 years.
Yeah.
If I may, I'd love to see the figures.
Okay.
Just for the Brentwood School District.
Okay.
Because I think it's necessary in order to show how the city is helping to keep the school district viable. Because if that money's not coming in, then the property taxes alone on the individual residents has to go up to meet their needs.
Right. We could talk about a lot of things, but one thing you're raising this, it's a good point, and some of you may not remember this, but when the city back in the day, when it was approving Promenade and Square Point, the city had a policy that we had to demonstrate to the city, Stiefel, had to demonstrate to the city, and it was that impacted your approval of TIF to a development. We had to prove that these bonds could pay off in 15 years.
Yes.
That was your policy. It wasn't ours. It was your policy. So it was a good policy, in my opinion, because even though we have 23 years to work with, you said, and rightfully so, you said I want to be comfortable that these are going to pay off not in 23 years, but in a shorter period of time. And you picked 15 years.
Yes.
I mean, collectively, Board of Aldermen.
The other thing that isn't easy to calculate, there's probably no way to calculate, but is the personal property taxes that the businesses paid once they came into the community as
Right.
well. So as well as the business licenses, and then there's one other one, and the utility taxes. Is the increase in property values in the overall community once these developments were put in as well. So the property taxes, and people over the years have talked about trying to come up with a calculation for that. Don Beinbeck does one, and because as the investment was made in the commercial areas, the convenience of living in the community became a more desirable area. We saw a boom in new housing until the downturn, but have seen a return to that in the last couple of years. We had 12 new houses completed last year, and I think we have the same number going up this year and will be completed. So There's a lot of peripheral benefits that come from the investment of these projects. So, Alderman Saunders.
Yes, this is all excellent that 3 of them have done so well. I do want to give credit to the residents for that school board forcing the Brentwood Square. That's when I got involved in city government, was really from the school angle, and it was after the promenade TIF, and there were lots of rumors and lots of this wasn't going to benefit the schools and so forth. And so then after that, Len Eschbach was one of them, I know, but was instrumental in making sure that some of that money, also the surplus money, was given to the schools sooner with Brentwood Squares. But it was the residents demanding more for the schools. So I do want to give them credit and let them know that their voice really makes a difference. It is great that we're doing all these wonderful developments and that it does create this additional revenue. But again, with everything, there's trade-offs. There's trade-offs for increased crime, there's trade-offs for increased traffic, and so forth. So money in and of itself, more money is not a goal. It needs to be well balanced. And I'm not saying we haven't. That's why everyone wanted to kind of put the brakes after Brentwood Promenade, and that's why I was championing to have the 1990 or 91 comprehensive plan updated, because we wanted to see how we could absorb the new development that we were doing. And once you do it, you can't turn back. So I just want to emphasize that, and I know now we're going to update the comprehensive plan, which I'm happy again, because we need to start now becoming discriminating, very discriminating in what kind of additional development we have. Because we have around us, we've got Webster and Glendale and Ladue and Clayton, and they've maintained a little bit more of their bedroom quaint communities, and I feel like we sometimes serve as a service area for them. We've got the Target and the big box things that they come to. When I was talking to the city administrator at Clayton, he's like, oh yeah, I'm always at your Target. And I feel like sometimes we service some of theirs instead of them having to drive to Kirkwood or way out. So we have to plan carefully and make sure that we maintain the integrity of the feel that we want for this city, and that community feel and that sense of character and warmth. So I am glad that these ones were successful. Money does help in a lot of things, but by the same token, like I said, there's increased, and we've not increased our police force in a while, and we can see the crime inching up and some in the neighborhoods. The one thing I wanted to ask, would you know, why did Maplewood receive a payout from that Hanley, the $1 million, and not us? Isn't that the regional?
In the Hanley Road corridor?
Yeah.
Both cities receive monies for projects in the Hanley Road corridor. Is that what you mean?
The $1 million reimbursement was because they funded the Metrolink Bridge over Hanley Road initially, because there weren't funds available for that. So as part of the TDD agreement, they received that $1 million repayment.
Okay. So that was kind of a priority in the industry.
Well, if they hadn't widened the bridge, they weren't planning on it at the time. Hanley Road would have, if you remember, the bridge was real narrow there. Well, they were going to widen everything on both sides, but not there with Metrolink.
So this was to bring the Metrolink station.
And that was a deal that was worked out with Buzz Westfall when he was still around.
Right. So that bring the Metrolink station there in Brentwood.
Well, just they were going to go there. It was the bridge over Hanley Road.
Yeah.
Okay. No. And then you said that you felt confident that we would retire the Meridian by the end of the project. How confident? What % rating do you give that we'll retire?
Well, it's what I meant, but thank you for asking that. Let me clarify. What I mean by that is it will end by the end of the TIF, no matter what. You know what I mean? You can't go beyond the TIF.
And if we don't pay it off, I know that's the bondholders, but what does that do to development if?
No impact. No impact. That's a risk. That's not at all. That's a risk that in this case, Compass Bank took. But
it's all changed.
I wouldn't feel too. I don't mean I probably shouldn't even say this, but I wouldn't feel too sorry for them. Those have been bank bonds earning a much higher interest rate than what the market is. So, I don't think if it runs to the end of the TIF, their yield is an attractive yield. So they should be happy, actually. But if it turns out the other way, if the developer buys those bonds, if you've considered that, if they buy those bonds, which I understand still might be happening, but if they buy those bonds and they're not paid off, because that's your question, by the end of the 23-year life, that's the end of it.
Okay.
It ends, it stops. And I
Okay.
think it will, so understand my point, it will end, it will run the life of the TIF.
It'll just,
Yeah.
well, it has to.
It will,
The time
yeah.
click.
It will.
Okay. And then, question regarding that. Darn it, I lost it. Can't remember.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you very much, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item we have on the agenda is a presentation on the,
I remembered my question. Can I ask really quick?
sure.
Can I ask, sorry, Jim, I just remembered it. Also, I know that the Meridian was done at a time where it was a risky time, and therefore we did the interest rate swap. How many interest rate swaps have you done with governments where the government is on the variable side? One. Okay, because it was a risky market, we had to go. We couldn't get could we get fixed bonds?
I've been involved in hundreds, I'm not bragging, hundreds of these. And virtually every one of them is a fixed rate bond. The interest rate's fixed, doesn't change. Part of the strategy here was in this situation that you're talking about, was to have a variable rate bond. Variable rate bonds typically have low interest rates. Okay, so that's why this strategy was chosen. We were not the underwriter of those bonds, by the way.
Right.
So we were the advisor, and we expressed our view.
Right, and that's not
Yeah.
the
Your
we
view
did.
at that time?
Yeah, we
Okay,
did.
thank you.
right, and that's not the whole story, because the city was uncomfortable with the variable rate bonds.
Right.
The developer said that they could do it, which is why the city insisted that the developers get the letter of credit to guarantee the bonds if they were comfortable with the numbers, and which is why at the end of the day, either the developer or the banker is going to be one that's holding the bonds if they don't pay off.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
We had a personal guarantee from the developers, or from, no, 3 individual owners of
Right,
Eager
yeah.
Road Associates.
so
But it
we
ended up in a lawsuit instead of when the bonds got called.
yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that's why we insist on those guarantees in order to move forward.
Right.
So, okay. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, we have a presentation on our, the city put out an RFP and selected Higbee and Associates a number of months ago to do a compensation survey for the city of Brentwood, and we're going to have a presentation this evening by Linda Higbee. So, Linda?
Apologizing to everybody back here as I move forward. Try to do the best we can. We have a big deck of slides to get through today, and I know some of you have been through a piece of this before, so we're going to try to do this as quickly as possible, open it up so that you have as much time as possible for questions this evening as well. Okay, we were hired to do a study, and here were your study objectives: providing a total compensation review and to recommend some changes for the city of Brentwood. I'm not going to read the slides to you. You can see them as we go. We had 3 deliverables, and I think these are really key for you to look at. They were to deliver a competitive review of Brentwood's compensation and benefits to a selected comparator group, to recommend changes to the structure based on what we found in the data, and then to also issue a structured report, which many of you have already had an opportunity to read. Here's the process we followed, and I think this is kind of key. We're going to give you some examples as we move through that, but the selection of comparators was absolutely crucial to what that data looks like. The design of the surveys, both for compensation and benefits, the distribution to that group of comparators, the timeline we set on getting that data back to us, the collection and analysis, obviously the recommendations as well. Okay, up, down. All right, and then the final report, obviously. Reaching agreement on a comparable cities, what we ask your team to do, your internal project team, which was HR, finance, so it was Gina and BOLA. And why am I leaving you out? Where are you? I saw you. There you go. Anyway, so you had a 3-member team internally, and their task was to really look at a recruitment review. Where do you go to pull people from? Where do you lose people to? Who's in a similar growth position? All those kinds of things we asked them to consider. And they came up with a group of 14 cities. Again, your project team, HR, city administrator, finance director, and you came up with 14 final comparators. And that decision was then communicated to us, as well as to others. Here's your list of comparators. This is who we went out and asked or requested data from. We did a position description review. We feel like this is one of the most crucial parts of what we do because we ask that people match, and when we do the matching for you on content, skill, and scope of a job. And in order to do that, we have to understand how jobs might be different in the city of Brentwood. We did one-on-one interviews with employees in each job classification so that we understood your jobs. We had a clean job description to go out with this process. Consolidated titles, when we went through this process, one of the things that happened is that we saw that some jobs were very similar, although you had different little titles on them. So you might have job A with a dash and something following it. 90% of the positions we were able to match to the market. 6 had less than 3 matches. For us to consider it to be a match, we have to have at least 3 of your comparator cities matching that role. And if we don't, we consider it a non-match. There's just not enough data, a trend there for us to feel comfortable with that. 3 of those 6 were in the sanitation area, and as most of you know, not many cities have sanitation departments anymore. 25 classifications, 58% of the employees in those 25 classifications were above comparator average range maximums. Really key piece of data here as we go forward. 14 classifications, 18% of the employees were below market average when we looked at that same set of data. And 11 required no change, meaning they were right on the money with market. And that covered 24% of your employees. 15 of your classifications lead the market. When we looked at your comparator group of 14 and we looked at those range maximums, for those 15 classifications, you are absolutely at the top of that comparator group. 9 more are within 1. So you've got somebody who is equal to you or just above you for 9 additional comparator groups. So overall, what you're looking at is pretty good piece there. When we look at market philosophy, when we are telling you this is where you came in, we're looking at average or the 50th percentile of that market. Certainly one of the things we came back and talked to that team about was, do you want to consider looking at the 60th or 75th percentile for Brentwood, given that you have such a large portion of your population already there? So that was a piece that we talked about. We also talked about the culture of Brentwood. What can you do within the culture here that isn't too far afield from where you've been for most of your history? And the ability to absorb additional change. You guys have been through a lot over the past few years, and so we wanted to also take that into consideration. Here's what the ideal would be, is if you had a defined pay philosophy. I want to pay at the 90th percentile, for example. A high performance culture. I have heard Bola talk about that several times in terms of where you're driving your organization. High level of employee engagement. Truly being able to differentiate pay based on performance over time, and an adequate budget to keep pace, because a budget means I can keep pace with how the market is moving, and I've got some more that I can reward performance with. So you got to keep up with the market. You need a little bit more if you're going to reward performance. Also, the ideal from our perspective, when we look at the market and what's out there, would be a 7-step plan for police and fire. If they aren't there, that's where people are trying to drive their organizations on police and fire. You have some challenges. You have an implied but not articulated pay philosophy. And what I mean by that is when I look at how you're currently paying, it would imply that you want to be a market leader in terms of how you're paying. The culture in transition, you're moving toward high performing, but you aren't there yet. You're still in the process of getting there. Mixed level of employee engagement. Metrics are at a different stage here. Depending on the department you talk to, some are already out there. They know exactly what they're measuring to know how their departments are performing. Others are just beginning that curve. Adequate budget, absolutely crucial. You can't do a lot of things that are ideal if you can't meet market in terms of the movement and then continue to grow based on performance. Those mixed market ratios, when I'm telling you that you have 25 of your employees or 25 employee classifications that are really high, and you've got those 14 that are low, that tells me that those are mixed ratios for us. So you've got some of your employee populations doing well, some not as well, which gets back to that. The 7-step plan has a cost to it. You also, for the first time in your history, if you do this, will be treating one group of employees or 2 groups of employees differently than you're treating your entire population, and that's different. Okay, what we're asking in our recommendation is that you evaluate all the options presented. We looked at a wide variety of options. We costed 2 of them. Take a look at it. Acknowledge where you currently are and where you want to go to, and then transition to the ideal over a period of time. When you look at what your organization can absorb and move forward to, you may decide to do some of the things we're recommending in bits and pieces rather than all at once. Okay, steps versus ranges. Big debate with some cities on whether you use steps or ranges. In your particular case, you've got 14 comparators. 3 of them use steps for police and fire and traditional ranges for everybody else. 5 use steps for everybody. They say if it's good for one, it's good for everybody, and that's who they are. 8 have a step system. 5 of the 8 have steps for all employees. 3 use steps, police and fire, okay, and then traditional for everybody else. And 1 just has probably the most unique system I have ever seen. So we couldn't classify them with any of these. And 5 use ranges for everybody, okay? We looked at a lot of options, and I could spend hours going through some of these options with you, but I really won't. What we tried to do when you're looking at this slide is we looked at a different option. We wanted to define it for you because one of the things that we've discovered is it's been a while since you guys have been through a pay study. Some people have never been through a pay study, and we may be using terminology that to us is really familiar, but may mean something else to you. So the first thing we did is we said, okay, you could just take market and say, everybody lives with market, and this is what it says for your job, and this is where we are. That's really what it means. Regardless of where they are now, everybody goes to market, the min and max of market, and that's where you sit. The reason we did not recommend that you go with this option is because 58% of your employees are already at a range maximum that exceeds that number. You could set your ranges based on the 60th to the 90th percentile. Pick one. You want to be a market leader even, you could say that. There's one out west, a city out west who does that. They say, we will lead the market. So anytime somebody else changes a range, they go in literally within 30 days and theirs is higher. That is their philosophy. Setting ranges for Brentwood above a comparator level has some implications. We always say, and we have clients who do this, who set theirs above that. You want to make sure that you're really comfortable with that, and you want to make sure that if any of your citizens were looking at that, they would be comfortable that that's where you want your pay range set. The cost of raising the 42% that aren't at market or that would have to be adjusted begs the question of, could you really afford to do this, or could you afford to do it right now? Okay. Next is we looked at steps for police and fire and pay ranges for others. So we kind of looked at that. We discounted that option because when we look at your history, you've treated everybody the same across time. So is it the time that you want to separate those two? Maybe. When we looked at your history, when we looked at those 14 comparators, and we said, you've got some good market data out here for having everybody in steps. So that's why we did not go with that one. Current steps reduced to 12 for all employee classification. So we just take your same set of ranges because they're adequate for that 58%, more than adequate. And we took those and we said, let's just convert it to steps. You got 12 of them. Most of your people are high in the range anyway. So when we looked at that and we said, we could do that because you've got really 30 steps now. You just kind of do 1% increments to them. So it looks like you've got 30 steps. It doesn't meet the lower number of steps that police and fire need in order to be market competitive. So that's a piece of it. So when we looked at it and we said, the reason we selected the option to price for you that we did, 7 steps for police and fire, 12 for the others. And what that means is we converted your existing 30 steps that you have. We didn't adjust any ranges up. You had a couple of positions that had to be moved for market because they weren't competitive to market. And for police and fire, we converted the existing ranges for them into 7 steps, most of which are already well into those ranges, and you're going to see that in a minute. No comparator reported 30-plus steps. That's why we didn't just say, okay, stay right where you're at. The police and fire were anywhere from 3 to 10. So again, 7 seems to be that sweet spot if you're going to do steps for police and fire. It aligns the number of steps with the 5 who reported steps. So that's why we picked that one to price. We did consider all those options. We talked about it. We looked at the pros and cons for those, and we modeled 2 for you to say, what would it cost to implement some of these options? And the ones we did was we put everybody in that 12-step plan. You didn't have to adjust for 7, for 12, for some of the other folks.
Who is we, please? Just we.
I'm sorry.
Who is
we did the modeling. Your project team were the ones that we were in contact with to say, here are all the options. Which ones shall we do? Okay.
They
So
gave
those
you the
are those 3
direction,
individuals.
though.
Correct.
Okay, and can you name those 3 or positions?
Sure. HR, finance, and your city administrator.
Okay.
Okay? All right. I'm doing this as fast as I can, I promise. 7 steps. When we look at steps, equal. equal steps. Step 1 to step 2 to step 5 to step 7 kind of thing. Approximately 5% between steps to get to 7. Typically, if we were going to design this from scratch and you didn't have ranges right now, we would want to have 4 to 5% on that entry point, generally through about step 4, maybe even up to step 5, but then the remainder you would slow that growth down. Range minimums don't need to be adjusted, so we really didn't have an opportunity to come in and say, okay, let's adjust something for those. On the 12 steps for the remaining folks, we used existing ranges, 3% step to step. That 2.5 to 3.5 has been sort of the sweet spot for how market has been moving lately. And then 5% grade to grade. Okay, not a lot of change here from what you already had. Little range smoothing, and that was it. Positions were placed into those ranges based on the highest of market or their current maximum. So that's how we put together the initial matrix. Then we came back for internal equity and said, what about those 6 positions that we couldn't match, that had less than 3 matches, for example? We either left them in exactly the same range, or when we came back in for that review and said, okay, is this where they go? Because sometimes for those 6 positions, when the market moves something else, we wanted to take a look at it saying if position A and position B were the same before, I can price position B, but I have an A. Let's see what it would look like here. That same internal team, HR, finance, city administrator, looked at what we call an internal equity review, which is the alignment between market and internal equity. So we had an opportunity to look across your organization, specifically for those 6 positions, to say, does this still feel right for those 6 that we don't have market values for? Here's what it looks like, and I'm apologizing in advance for the tiny print, but for those of you who have this in front of you, this was a specific request that we had. This is the matrix for your grades, and it shows you across all of your departments where those positions fell. It does not show you individuals, it shows you the positions. Okay. Our next step was actually to model the cost of implementation. We sort of settled on that model and said, what's it going to cost us? We wanted to know who fell below minimum and what's that going to cost me? And below minimums impacted only that group of positions we talked about earlier where you were low to market and an adjustment needed to be made. Above maximums, we've already talked kind of about the group that already fits there and what should happen with those. And then we looked at something called compression. And for those of you who haven't been in the world of work where you have lots of incumbents in one job, what compression does is it basically when you move your higher rates, the higher in rate, and you aren't adjusting the people who've already been here, then you wind up with somebody who's worked for you for 3 years and somebody you just hired making the same amount. So that's what compression is. We looked at compression in 2 ways, one of which is just next step. The other is to look at as a time and position. How long have I been in this job? And that's where you're going to see some differences in the cost. And then we also looked at that 7-step plan that we've been talking about. Below minimum, you have 19 people, not classifications, 19 individuals who are below minimum. And we define that as anybody whose current pay is less than the minimum of the assigned grade. You're not meeting the market minimum. The cost of adjusting those 19 people is $26,910 to get them to minimum. The highest increase is for 2 individuals, and it's $3,200, a little over $3,200. And the smallest adjustment is 41 cents to get somebody where they need to be. These individuals, we believe, are the highest risk for leaving. It's also the most difficult to attract quality talent into if you aren't meeting the market for those jobs. And it should be your first priority for budget dollars from our perspective. And the cost overall is 0.4%. Okay, above maximums, this is defined as anybody who is at or above the maximum range assigned to their position. We would suggest that no adjustments in base pay should be made to this group of individuals until market catches up with them. There's 24 people who are impacted by this. These are individuals again. And what we would suggest you do if you feel like you really need to reward performance for those 24 individuals is that you consider some type of non-base building merit for them. And from our perspective, if you're tight on budget dollars, these are your lowest priorities. Okay, 2 traditional calculations. It's, again, bear with me because I think it's important to understand. Time and position basically says however long I've been in this position, not necessarily with the city, but in this particular role, and I give you full credit for that. So we've set up a 12-step plan, and that means that anybody at 12 years or 22 years, if they aren't yet at maximum, we would take all the way to maximum of that range. An employee with 5 years moves to step 5. One with 13 years would go to step 12 because that's the highest step you have, but they never go higher. A next step allows you to say something happened along that pay continuum for that person to be out of alignment with where we would predict they should be to begin with. And it simply says that if I was on step 5, I can move to step 5, I move to step 6 in the range. So it's one up from where I am. Okay? So what this really does, the difference in the two models, one says however long you've been in that role, you're getting full credit for it. The other one says something happened along your continuum, and so we want to go back and do that. We did double check a few of those, and as we ran a couple of your people ragged, because in some cases you have to go all the way back to a personnel file to determine when somebody moved into a particular role with the city. Okay, and then we have something we call next step plus compression. When we ran that next step model, one of the things we found in one of the departments is that when we looked at a supervisor-subordinate relationship, there wasn't enough, in our opinion, differential between those two. So we went back in and built in a compression piece. Okay, here's what we mean by compression. And again, I'm going to run through these really fast, and if somebody needs more time later on it, we can. I used police officers for this particular one. A police officer, in my grid, those are your steps, 1 through 12, and we rounded all the numbers. Officer 1 has 5 years of service and his pay is $62,000. Officer 2 has 15 years and his pay is at $73,000. For time and position, Officer 1 moves to 63 and Officer 2 moves to 78. In the next step model, Officer 1 would move to 63, but Officer 2 moves only to 75 because it's the next step. Okay? Why do you deal with compression? We talked about this before. If you don't deal with compression now, you're going to be hiring people in, and they're going to be making what your people who have been with you a long time and already know the processes in the city are.
Excuse me. Could I ask
Okay,
one thing before?
I'm sorry?
Was that could you go back 2 slides? Was that a 12-step?
We did 12. This is the
Okay,
12 one.
but for an officer, it would be 7 years.
We modeled both for you.
Okay.
Okay? Option 1, time and position. Below minimum, you had 19 people. That was at 26,000 we talked about. Compression, you had 32 people that we felt would need a compression adjustment for 117,000. Total cost on this model is 144,000, or just over 2%. Okay? So again, in today's world, pretty affordable. 12-step options, the next step, if you run through the next step, same methodology we just talked about, it impacts 66 people, but it's only $102,000 to get them where they need to be. Again, the difference between the 102 and the 144 is a function of taking that guy who had 5 years or 12 years all the way to the top, if you will, versus just to the next step. Okay, 12-step model. Police and fire are in that 12-step. So when you're looking at the 144 and the 102, that presumes you leave everybody on a 12-step plan. Time and position for every employee. 12 years or more of service at range maximum. So if I have 12 or more, I went all the way to the max, even if I'm right now sitting down at step 5. Okay, total cost to implement, a little over 2%. Employees meeting or exceeding market would not be eligible for a raise. That's those 25 people we talked about. And the next step would be 1.1 to 1.5% increase. So again, that's sort of the summary where they are. We modeled an option of 7 steps for police and fire, and then 12 steps with the others. In those 3 models, we looked at exactly the same methodology we talked about before. We just used 7 steps. And here's what happens with fire. In the case of fire, next steps, you had 10 people who were impacted for $18,005. Time and position, you had 5 people that needed to be adjusted for how long they had been in their roles, a little over $10,000. And the next step plus compression, we had 3 officers that were in a supervisory role, I think it was 3. That what you see that jump to 32,000 there is because that differential just was really tiny, and we wanted to make sure that it grew a little bit. So that's what that looks like. Police options, again, 1410 for the next step, time and position. So again, not a ton of cost there from our perspective. Again, we're used to seeing some pretty big numbers here. 35,000 in each case. So minor adjustment, like $37 difference in those two models for police, and there was no compression issue. When we looked at supervisor-subordinate relationships, there was sufficient differential not to have to advance them a step. So here's what all of your models look like when you pull them together. 12 steps for everybody. Time and position is a little over 2%. Next step is 1.5. Fire only, time and position about 0.6. When you look at next steps, it goes up to 1.2. Next step plus compression gets all the way up to 2%. Police, time and position is 1.9. Next step is 1.9. So again, any way we shake it, dice it, slice it, in terms of the recommendations we're looking at, you're looking at about a 2% increase in cost. Okay, 2.1, current budget of 3% currently exceeds what you need to implement the model. That 2.5 to 3.5, when we talk to your comparators as well as others around the city, those numbers are running anywhere between 2.5 to 3.5. A couple with range adjustments are significantly higher than that. You got a couple of cities that are in some financial difficulty, and they're coming in a little under that. That's kind of where it is. We would suggest that you use that remaining 1% of that 3% budget to come back and do non-base building kinds of things for folks if you want to give extra raises there. Okay, all models, 2.1% or less. So again, I guess I'm accustomed to looking at things that have to be done for some cities over an extended period of time in order to get them where they need to be. Individual adjustments range from less than 1% to a high of 10.3% for 8 employees, and 3 of those are the fire people that I was talking about where we needed a significant differential that wasn't there, and using that 1% remaining for the pay. Okay, let's talk about pay practices, because this is one of those pieces that I think is really important to you when we look at some of the pieces you've just heard me talk about. From a salary administration perspective, non-base building merits would be new for you. Historically, even though somebody's been at the top of their range or above their range, you've just continued to give them raises each year. We're suggesting to you that should no longer happen. Okay. Your range maximums are more than ample and should really be respected as a range maximum. 2015 salary increase budgets, low end 1.6, high end is 4. Again, some people put some range adjustments with that. Range changes is 1.6 all the way up to a little over 6% for one of your comparators. Let's talk about benefits. 12 of the 14 completed all or a portion of the survey, and as of today, we can tell you they completed all of the survey because just this week we got in a missing item, which would allow us to do that. Overall, your package is competitive. You've got some things that over time you'd want to look at. You lead your comparator group in terms of what you charge your employees for their health care, and what we mean by lead is that you actually charge them less than a lot of your comparators do. So just so we're really clear on that. Your STD and LTD programs, again, you kind of lead your comparator group in that. And then obviously, I don't think this is news to anybody, but fire has kind of an interesting sick plan that certainly exceeds market. Okay, so just a quick review on each of these and where you are. What you're seeing is that when we say they're equal, they're sort of within that same norm. So when we're looking at the number of plans, you're right on the money with everybody else. Your deductibles are right in there, your out-of-pocket maximums. In terms of the monthly cost to employees, your employees are in better shape than other cities because you're charging them less. The HSA, HRAs, you're with the majority of folks out there with that. Dental, you're a little better, but it's because of what you're charging your employees in terms of the percentage of that premium. Life insurance, again, right on the money. We're not seeing anything too exciting there. Your STD, LTD plans are a little better than the norm out there. Again, we wouldn't get excited about it. They're just not a big cost item typically, and so those aren't things that we kind of go, wow, we've got something here. Your vacation is a little better on the entry end and right on the money on the upper end. Sick, again, you're high for fire. You're right in the money with everybody else. Holidays, I'd almost feel bad putting this up here, but you're like one more than everybody else. So they're there. The catastrophic loan bank, again, you don't have that as a formal plan, and some of your other comparator group does. Your tuition reimbursement is right in the middle. Nothing exciting going on there. Oops, I tried. Okay, so here's what we're suggesting would be an appropriate course of action for Brentwood. Stop giving base building raises to those who are at or above range maximum. respect those maximums. Discontinue longevity increases, we did not find any market basis for you continuing to do that. And for us to recommend that somebody keep a plan, we would be looking for at least half of your comparator group to have that type of plan. The ones that we talk to who have them are in the process of either grandfathering or are moving away from them. So again, and we see that all across the state, in Kansas as well, and in Illinois. Would really like you to consider, again, you're in a great position to move into a 7-step plan for police and fire. A lot of cities struggling to get there because of the cost, and you're already there. Develop a pay philosophy that you can transition to over time. When I've met with people here and I hear our citizens are wonderful, our employees are great, that to me sort of leads to a pay philosophy of maybe market average or 50th percentile isn't the right number. Right now, it might be a little costly because you've got some folks who aren't at market to go there, but if that's really the way you feel, develop that philosophy over time. And use your budget for below minimums first. For those folks who aren't market competitive, in order to be able to attract the best, to be able to keep them when they get here, you need to adjust those minimums back to where they need to be. Okay, let's see if I can. From our perspective, the next steps here are that you need a pay philosophy. You also need to choose an implementation option. We've presented you two that we think are pretty good options for where you are and where we think you need to go. But clearly, you guys need to pick an option, where you want to go. Update your classifications. That goes without saying. We had some title consolidations. We got a couple of title changes kind of thing to better reflect what people do. That's an administrative kind of detail. Review individuals for an appropriate level in the classification. So what we mean by that is, for example, in your maintenance workers, for example, you have multiple levels. You want to make sure that by individual, you have them leveled properly based on where the market sees those positions. We suggested that you do. Now, a lot of folks attended, so I don't know how many of these you really want to do. But typically, we do 1 to 2 employee meetings for cities when we do this type of study so that we can walk employees through the process itself. Typically, those happen either about the same time this meeting happens, or you wait until the city has chosen an option so that we can also review that process with employees. And then, of course, we're also in the midst of efficiency meetings, which is part 2 of what we agreed to do for the city. I did it. All right. Questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Linda at this point?
I have plenty.
Alderman Sanders?
I know, I'm sorry. No, I actually don't have that many. This is something, though, that we're going to be considering in 2015, correct? Like, we're going to be discussing some of the options that you proposed to us and some of the suggestions you made in 2015. Are we going to discuss this like in a workshop as a board of aldermen? I know Alderman Kramer's not here. Is that, I'm not sure I understand where we're
Well,
going
to implement,
from here.
a lot of these would take a phasing in process, and we'd have to develop a plan for doing it. So yes, it would have to be something that would have to be discussed and then implemented in 2015.
Okay, well, I mean, there's big questions as to whether we want a 12-step plan for non-public safety employees. I kind of like to keep public safety a little bit separate since there's some negotiations. So, you know, there's the step plan 7-year because there's risk in both of their jobs, and therefore they may lose their jobs, you know, earlier in their career than maybe somebody that can work 20 years or so. So I understand the need of getting them to top pay. And it's what the market does. Now, I was under the impression that all of the cities are using step plans for public safety.
No, that is not accurate. Sure. No, that is not accurate. You have a combination of things going on. You have 5 of your 14 cities who use the same traditional range structure for everybody. You have 5 of them who use steps for everybody. And then you have 3 additional ones who use a combination of public safety has steps. The others go the other way. Let's see if I can get back to that slide.
We
Can you
received
find it, Lynn?
the step plan comparison, which says Ladue has 4 steps, Maplewood has 5. This is for fire.
This is fire only, right?
At Kirkwood, 9. I mean, is this correct?
Yeah, those are the steps that were reported, but not every city has steps.
You got to be in the mic.
Right.
But these are the majority of the cities that you,
Yes, not
But that's
every city
fire
has
only.
steps.
That's fire only.
does almost every city for fire have steps?
Most for fire do, not all for fire do.
Okay, that's
just-
what I
just
was
so you're-
wondering. So,
you're
okay,
clear.
and we want to put
And again,
police
when
in
we're,
the same
what
because
we're
they're.
looking at and what Lynn's about to pull up here is really what happens for your 14 comparators.
Okay.
Because it looks different depending on who you pick as comparators.
Okay, and I had asked to see the, let me see, the step plans for the 14 cities. Does that exist, or is that out of the range, a copy of what they submitted?
You certainly, again, if you want the raw data for what was submitted, you can, but remember, we asked them to complete a survey. So for those who completed the survey itself, they told us how many steps, they told us what the entry point was and what the maximum was.
Right, that's what I'm expecting, is about a chart like this.
I'm happy to look at that. I'm happy, at Bola's request, I can send you the data that was sent to us, but not everybody gave us every step to step.
If everybody is in,
If they sent, for example, a good example is Carly down at Clayton does a phenomenal job matching positions. Her survey will tell me that there are let's say there's 4 steps for certain positions, or the range of steps is 4 to 10, and then she'll tell me what the min and the max is.
okay, that's, and I'm fine with that if I see, I guess, the min and the max for each. I guess we have that here for fire. Okay, because I'm used to seeing like the date, like an appendix where you get the summaries, and I was just assuming it was a chart saying min, maximums, and what their step increase is, because it seems to me that's what you're looking at, is you want to be comparable with the market.
Yeah, the majority of your comparators completed their surveys, and in that survey, we didn't say attach a copy of your step plan. We said, tell us if you have steps, tell us how many you have.
Okay.
By position, and then the min and the max.
Okay.
Okay?
By position, the min and max.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask is when you keep referring to above range maximum, because you're suggesting that once they reach the maximum that we only give merit-based pays, correct?
I think we're saying 2 different things. What we are suggesting is that when you establish a range maximum for a position, that you honor that, and that means that you don't continue to grow pay. And if you are going to do something for that group of individuals, that it is some form of non-base building merit.
That's what I understand.
Okay.
The thing is though, if we have currently a position and we're number 1 in the market, you're indicating that you still support, because presently our goal within Brentwood, since we didn't have a compensation survey, we didn't know, our goal within Brentwood may still be to increase their top pay 10% more under the step plan, 7-step, and under the 12 in some positions, they'll still grow another 2 steps, so even 6% further on. So we will be we are the market.
If you keep,
Top.
for
And
those
we have some
25,
positions where you have the steps, they're still not going to be topped out.
for those positions where we are saying that you are topped out or you are leading the market, that means your current range maximum exceeds by some percent, and it will be different for each of the positions, any of your other comparators.
I'm not asking our current range maximum. I'm asking, in the first one says if they're currently being paid number 1 in the market, you're saying that we should still, because the city thinks their maximum should have been higher, we should still move them up to that maximum? That's set by the city, not by the market, the old.
In your current system, you have a range maximum, which you have continued to grow pay above for a certain number of employees. I can't tell you how many of the 25, for example, are actually above range maximum right now. But your policy historically has been to continue to grow base pay for folks regardless of their range maximum. We're suggesting to you that we would
Okay.
like to see you not do that in the future.
I'll get back to this. The accounting clerk, this is one I'm going to give an example, that the maximum pay, our maximum is 61.3. The market maximum is 50.7. Now, the current pay is $58,000. You're saying even though we're $8,000 over the market, we should still move that person at 61 to 61.3 before we then just give merit base pay raises without, or raises, what did you call them before?
Non-base building.
Non-base building raises.
We certainly could have looked at that model, but when you look at the large percentage of your current employees who are at or above their current maximum, you would be making individual position decisions that are different. And when you look at transitioning from one system to another, the thing we always guide people to do is to treat your employees consistently. So you can't, from our perspective, we would never recommend that you pick the outliers and not pick on, so adjusting accounting clerks, for example, but not pulling fire and police all the way back to market makes no sense. From our perspective and from your history, you would treat all employees the same.
Well, and maybe that's where I have a point of disagreement. There is a level of risk inherent in being a fireman and a policeman, and they put their lives on the line for us. I don't think that same risk is inherent for the other employees. And I know that's been a philosophy of the mayor's, but I don't agree with the philosophy. I'm one alderman, that's just my personal opinion. But I don't understand how we can, okay, the three decision makers.
Wait, can you explain that again? What was my philosophy?
Well, you're always saying that if fire and police get the benefit, everyone should get the benefit, or everyone should be on the same.
It's a benefit, though. I'm not talking about salaries. Benefits we were talking about when that was made.
Okay, well,
So
they
if
were
we
all on the
offer a
same
benefit to
salary
right.
plan, step
No,
plan.
because
Okay.
I recommended a 6-year step plan
Okay.
for fire,
Okay.
for patrolmen and firefighter paramedics at the entry level is what I recommended to Ways and Means about 1.5 years ago. So I was only referring to the, don't take it the wrong way, but the entry level positions in police and fire to get them to the top.
Okay.
Now going through this, now we're looking at going to a step plan for all of the employees, which would be a 12-year plan for them, and the recommendations 12 years for civil employees, and then a 7-year step plan for public safety. All employees within those areas. So at the same time, what I've said over the last couple of years is that the area that we are deficient in, and I think the report states it, is a number of our public works positions are below the market. And those were the ones that we needed to bring up to that medium or above market area.
Okay,
So
thank you for the
that was
clarification.
my philosophy.
Okay, thank you
So-
for the clarification. And so, but even then, I think you need to look at public safety separate from the other employees. That's just my personal opinion. But what I don't understand is that in some, and I'm not picking on one, it just happens to be the top one, but we are the market maximum. And so with the step plan, you still have them going higher. And I know you're saying, but my thing is you met with 3 employees in discussing this. I mean, your recommendations initially were a little bit harsher. And the problem is I have to factor in being fiscally responsible with the residents' tax dollars. So in the past, we never had a compensation survey. And I thought, people are saying, oh, everybody's overpaid, underpaid. I said, until I see the numbers, I have no idea. So I am a numbers person, and I like to see it documented. But now we have the numbers, and us as a board have to decide how far above the next person we want to be. How much separation do we want as the number one person?
You're absolutely right.
Right.
As a team, you have to determine what your pay philosophy is. When we make recommendations, we try to take into consideration a couple of things. The first of which is you treated everybody the same before. So when we look at that, and we look at if we're placing people based on the higher of market or their current maximum, how could we treat finance clerks differently than we do X, Y, or Z? And I think that's philosophically where you guys may indeed differ. But when we look at it and say from an implementation standpoint, you've got 2 ways of approaching this. Everybody comes back to market, which is very punitive for your public safety employees, for example.
Right.
And for
I don't
some
want
of the
to pull
others.
them back, do you understand?
But I'm talking about ranges,
freezing.
not individuals. Nobody would ever suggest that. I mean, you certainly red circle people, and people stay at the top of ranges for a long time. You don't take incumbent pay away ever. But you can adjust ranges, which I think is what you were really referring to.
Well, in your recommendations, you say red circle freeze any position that is above market levels and do not adjust these ranges until market catches up with the current ranges. Incumbents at or above the range maximum should be eligible for lump sums only. And so what I'm saying, and it's not so much your decision, this is, again, the team.
Correct.
How far over are we going to be? How much of a spread do we want from the
But that's not what you just
competitors?
said. What that's saying is, and I'm going to use a number, if the
Okay.
top of the range is 80,000 and we have an employee that's at 82,000 today, that person's going to stay there until the market range goes above that 82,000.
Okay, now freeze right there so we can, because we'll understand. That person's at 82,000 and they're the top market person. But according to the step plans, we have those individuals going up 2 more steps.
No, not if
Not if they're above their range
mixing
maximum, we don't.
your ranges and the steps together. Again, and this is why we need to have another meeting
Well, a
as
workshop
board
would be
to
great. That's what I mean.
discuss this,
I think that would be great.
You're not fully understanding. You're mixing the two together and not understanding what the
Well, it's what we had
recommendation is.
discussed before, when
Well,
I said if you have, we discussed this, if somebody goes in and, like, they go into, we'll just use an example, they go in at step 5 at 66,000, and that's already the top pay, you still have them going up 2 more steps.
Would you pull up the step plan, please, for the police officer? I think this will help understand, because I think you're mixing 2 things together.
Right.
Do you
Because we're
remember
not
what we talked
suggesting-
about in closed session, though, where you were saying, where do you set that maximum step, that top range? Where do you set that?
Remember that where we placed people was the higher of their current range maximum or market, whichever was greater.
Right.
That's where the position was placed.
Okay, but this is what I'm saying is, this is our higher, this here was prepared without any additional information.
That's
So
what we've
let's
had
say-
for
That's what
years.
you've had. I
That's
know.
the
I don't-
ranges that we've had. We're
That's-
talking about step plans now.
And what we did was we took those exact same ranges that you're looking at, converted them into 12 steps.
Which
Or
I
7.
completely understand. But what I'm saying is that means that here you have 1% increases, as Bola had told me. You go from A to II, and these were referred to me as steps, however you want to do it. But you took this maximum range here. Okay, so for instance, grade 1. If there are, down here, 29, the maximum range is 140,000. Let's say your study showed that we were at market, and we are the top of market, and we're at 137,000, and we're the top payer by far. You're saying that we should still, in their steps, increase them to 140,000.
Let's use this, okay? Because then I think everybody can see, rather than, because you could go blind looking at how tiny some of those pieces are. That makes this look big. Here's exactly what you're talking about, I believe. Let's say that in our example here of the 12-step plan for a police officer, that the market suggests that it should stop at 73. What we have done in our model is to say, you're already at 78. So yes, we are suggesting that 78, because so many people are already at the top anyway, you still are going to take people from 73 to 75 to 78. What Alderperson Saunders is suggesting is that why aren't we stopping them at 73? That's where the market would suggest it should be. And what we did was to look at the mixed ratio that you have right now with so many people at the top end of those ranges. So even though the market might suggest at 73, you've still got the bulk of your population in some of these classifications at 78 already. So yes, let's say you've got 3 people that are going to go there. We're suggesting that, yeah, those other 3 people get to make it all the way to 78 too.
But if you keep doing that, then what's the point of a market study? You're not coming within market. I mean, you can grandfather in the 78 people, but you'll bring in the new people, and they'll expect to get to that range. It doesn't
Because
make
you are freezing that range until market catches up with it.
Right.
So not only do the people who are sitting at market top, at the top end of your range, they don't get to continue to grow past it, which they have done historically. They don't get to grow past that anymore. But yeah, anybody coming in, until market catches up with it, that range doesn't move.
The problem with, I'm sorry, I'm Lynn, for those of you who haven't met me, I also work with Linda Higbee. The problem with what is being suggested is very simple, really. If you have 25 people in a classification that came in expecting your range to top out, and we're going to use this one just because it's easy to look at, expecting to top out at 78, and half of those 25 people are at 78 and the other half are not, then you're going to have an inconsistently applied range. If you don't keep that top where it is and allow people to get there, then you have people who are doing the very same job, standing next to a guy who's doing the very same job as them, who's making significantly more. In order to do that, you would really have to make serious cuts in pay to individuals, and we would never recommend that.
I think what I didn't understand is that, as you were saying, that the 78, the people that are at the top stay there, except for merit-based raises that
Well,
don't.
non-base,
merit.
not merit,
Well-
non-base building, and we are suggesting
But
to you
those are merit.
that
You
that's
would only earn
absolutely
that.
the very last bucket of money you use.
Right.
Okay, and I think that's really the key here, but even that is a significant cultural change for the city of Brentwood. And I don't want you to lose sight of that, because as hard as that is from a recommendation standpoint, that is not something you have historically done. So you have a large group of employees who say, wait a minute, my base goes up every single year. And now all of a sudden we're going, no, if you're sitting at the top of your range, it sure doesn't.
Right.
We've
And
got
the
other-
reason I wouldn't say that merit, because most people think it's merit as if you get a merit increase, you continue to get that. What you're suggesting is that once you get to the top of that range, you may get some type of, it's a nasty word in the city of Brentwood, but bonus every year with that last pot of money if funds were available for that, some type of structure along those lines. But it wouldn't go to the base salary.
Right, which is what she said, consider
Non-base
utilizing
building. Right,
lump
non-base,
sum
right.
merits
Yeah.
for those who are at range maximum.
Yes, ultimately.
Yeah.
I love my question.
I love your questions too. What's the question this time?
You're using the term base pay across the board comparing to all 14 of the other comparable cities. But Brentwood also throws in longevity, which is a plus to the base pay. So if we go this route and go to step pay, I eliminate longevity, I
Yes.
bury it into my base pay as a one-time base builder and then freeze it from there on, I'm losing money somewhere.
Remember that what a step plan does is it acknowledges longevity, which is exactly what you're trying to do
So
with
you-
longevity pay. So it, again, from a transition standpoint, longevity pay is something that should come off the table. The same thing would happen with what used to be called COLA raises, but people aren't doing those for a long time because we didn't want to take money away once we gave it. And we went through all those hard times where things weren't moving forward. So one of the things that when we talk about market-based pay, that's what we're talking about. Market-based pay says pay moves, and it may move different for different positions. But most city positions right now are moving at that 2.5% to 3% level. That's sort of the norm, but it's not that plus, plus, plus. It is 2.5% to 3%, which has been built into the steps that we're suggesting you use.
And there's other ways you could grandfather it in,
Absolutely.
longevity and
But
pre-existing.
that's a big calculation that if
But I'm
the
just
city
saying,
wishes to change.
These are the things we need to discuss in
Yep.
order to come up with that philosophy and then the structure to go forward.
That should be a part of your transition plan, but I would not want you to lose sight of it, because the premise behind a step plan is that it does recognize longevity and it keeps you away from those compression issues.
Second question.
Sure.
You work into a step plan. You've established your ranges. You've established market ranges. You keep that same definition of the 14 cities that you used to establish those ranges, and you never change them? Or every so often you go out and recalculate what you're comparing against to find out if their ranges have caught up with you or exceeded you to make our adjustments?
When you do a market-based pay plan, you need to be looking at it every single year. You need to know what other cities are adjusting ranges, what are they doing for increases, so you need that information annually. Certainly over time, you may find that some of those cities are not really comparable to you anymore, so you may drop them, you may add a different city. A good example of that is a lot of people used to use the city of St. Louis as a comparator. Most of my clients and most of them that I've seen have dropped the city of St. Louis starting probably 5 years ago. They just aren't comparable. And so when we really look at where do you recruit from, where do you lose people to, what are the services that your city has, those are the kinds of things that establish comparability. And that's what we want you focused on with your comparator group. Right now you've got a group of 14. 10's considered ideal. So you've got 4 to play with, if you will, when you look at those to say, do these still fit year over year? If you start mixing and matching every single year, the data is going to be different.
Yep.
You pick a different group of 14 cities, the numbers are going to look different. You picked a really good group to compare against in terms of how high some of your positions come in, because you pick some cities that really are very comparable to you in terms of how they view their employees, how they pay their employees. So when we look at it, you've got a couple of outliers, but most of them are very comparable.
Okay.
The second part, if I may.
One more question. I think we'll schedule a meeting to discuss this in more depth in a workshop. So, Alderman Levy.
The second part of the philosophy of looking at how we might want to change what we're doing, you also brought up all of the compensation in the way of benefits and arrangement. When you start messing with those benefits and start looking at employee contributions or shortening up and stuff, how do you measure those changes into this base to make things work? Do I keep them independently separate so that I balance everybody, or do I actually look at grossly how I affected somebody's pay for that year?
I think when you look at your transition over time, we would certainly want you to look at that. You have one city, Western City, who used to charge employees nothing for benefits. Mm-hmm. And when they looked at how do we transition from where we are without trying to sort of overcompensate in terms of dollars, they actually, for the past forever, it seems like to me, literally $5 per year is what they increased their employee contribution level, because they felt like that was the fair way to get them up from 0 up to the 20% kind of ratio that their comparator group is charging employees. But it's an over time kind of thing. Now, one of my recommendations say pull the trigger and do it today. We're showing you sort of the roadmap, if you will. Your job is now to determine how much of that roadmap you really want to bite off. If you want to throw the switch and do it all at once, what we've shown you is it's affordable, 2%, kind of gets you there. The question is, does it get you there in all the right ways in terms of have you really thought through the philosophy, those kinds of things that we would want you to do.
That's not about the study. Did we, at one point, we hadn't received, I think, all the responses for what raises they're offering for the next year, what the other cities were doing? I thought that schedule was incomplete.
It certainly could be, because some cities,
What percentage they're offering?
until their board has signed off, are really unwilling to share that. And so we actually kind of track, what did you tell me and what did you really do from the prior year, kind of thing. So you had a couple, I think, who didn't make their decisions till December and would not have been in your report. And as I mentioned earlier, on the benefit side, we literally virtually every day are continuing to get updates, and some of those are from your comparator cities. What we aren't seeing is anything in terms of increases that's very that's worth an honorable mention. Everybody's coming in that 2.5 to 3. Some are kind of elevating that 3 by a range adjustment because they've looked at their comparator group and those ranges need to come up. So again, occasionally you see somebody who's just adjusting ranges. You have one of your comparators who literally made adjustments to ranges for 2 classifications, but nobody else. So you've got a variety of things going on out there. So it's not as simple as, it's not a Kentucky windage, it's 3% kind of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Done. Thank you.
All right, we do have a couple of public hearings this evening. One is being continued. We don't have anything back from P&Z yet, okay? So I will now open up public hearings scheduled for this evening for the fiscal year January 1, 2015 through December 31st, 2015 annual budget. So if anybody in the audience would like to address the Board of Aldermen with respect to our 2015 year budget, please come forward and give us your name and address. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Next item is we had a, oh, I'll wait for Bola. Oh. Did I miss something? Yes. I did?
The budget presentation.
Oh, you're going to do the presentation. That's fine. Okay. I thought that was a park presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly. I thought I'd start by reminding us of the reopening, ribbon cutting at Oak Tree Park that took place on November 8th. We couldn't have asked for better weather. Lots of parents and kids were there that day. It was a wonderful, wonderful event. The project was supervised by Eric Grunfelder. There you are. And we had some of the aldermen in attendance, so I just wanted to use this opportunity to thank everyone again.
And the mayor and my 2 dogs.
And, of course, the mayor was there. There are a number of Missouri state statutes that we need to abide by, and the City of Brentwood Municipal Code requirements in the preparation of this budget, all of which we did. Just a reminder of the city's vision statements, the tagline, City of Warmth, and we're reminded every day about the length that our citizens go to ensure that this community remains family and neighborhood oriented and that all our values are maintained. Core city services haven't changed. They remain as presented on the slides. When we prepare the budget, there are a number of factors that shape the city's fiscal health, and from that we are able to incorporate many of the feedback that we get from citizens, from the board, and from staff. Sales tax growth is very important, and we're thankful because of the businesses that we have in our districts. It is vital to our ability to continue to provide the services that we do to our citizens. Also, Jim Leahy mentioned earlier the importance of the city being able to fully retire the 2 TIF bonds 8 years and 9 years early, because that has now given us the ability to free up some cash so that we can continue to do even more important programs and investment in the city's capital infrastructure. Along those same lines, we're seeing growth in the economy. People are shopping. People are investing in their homes. We're seeing new homes being built in the community. We're seeing additions being built onto residential property. Also, we have the opportunity to apply for federal and state grants so that we can continue to invest in our infrastructure, capital infrastructure, streets and sidewalks. The assessed valuation for residential property hasn't grown as much as we would like. However, the commercial assessed valuation has grown by at least 10%. So we're seeing some incremental value and the revenues that go concurrently with that. At the same time, the expectation for department heads and their employees is every day to look for areas where we can perform better service, looking for efficiencies and effectiveness in how we operate. Operations citywide. I'm happy to report that the fiscal year 15 proposed budget is balanced. We once again were able to maintain local low taxes, meaning that our residential properties have no tax rate. We continue to meet and grow the fund balance policy that was adopted by the board last year. So the fund balancing policy goal is met in all 4 funds. We continue to provide free residential trash and recycling to all our residents. The city is financially strong. Once again, Jim Leahy mentioned the city's GO bond rating, AA, and the certificate of participation that we met with Standard & Poor's over last week. That's a AA minus. We continue to maintain current levels of services, and I guess the board could take credit for limiting the growth of expenditures, and that was accomplished not by anything that we primarily did, but the fact that dispatching is now provided by East Central Dispatch. So the general fund growth went down by 0.29%. Also, we continue to allocate monies towards investments. You will see further along in this presentation that we were able to do that, transferring funds from the general fund to the capital improvement fund so that we can do more streets. A total of 9 streets will be improved upon in next year's budget. We didn't have to make any direct cuts to any of the core services to balance the city budget. One new program that we are implementing next year is performance measurement. This tends to be a key component of the budget. It allows us to look at effectiveness. Are we doing the right things? Efficiency. Are we doing things right? And then tracking those matrices. In the budget document, under each department, you will see at a minimum 3 to 5 new performance measurements that we are beginning to track going forward. And we're going to be looking at that data. It will tell us if we're doing things right. It will tell us earlier on where improvements need to be made. And there is total buy-in in this program from department heads and the employees as well. About 2 years ago, we introduced this slide so that we're able to put this in better perspective, and you can relate it to your personal financial situation. The city budget is really no different. You should have money set aside so that you can pay your mortgage, maybe your car payment, food and utility, they rank up there as well. The city budget is no different. We need to set aside funds so that we can make all those debt service payments that are listed there. And then we have a little bit of flexibility in our operating department's general fund. And this is primarily just to show you that we're not from your personal budget. This slide is not the best. I know you might have difficulty seeing that, but this page is also in the budget document. And I just wanted to emphasize the fact that there are 4 distinct funds in the city: general fund, capital improvement fund, stormwater, park improvement, and sewer lateral. A majority of the city's personnel costs are paid out of general fund, and that includes compensation, employee benefits, and taxes, other things like utilities, supplies, insurance, contractual expenses. All the departments are funded out of general fund with the exception of stormwater and parks improvement and the sewer lateral. Capital improvement, we fund the purchases of vehicles, computers, repairs, renovation of the, streets, sidewalks, and buildings. This is funded primarily from the 1/2 cent capital improvement tax, sales tax. Also, the Stormwater Park Improvement Fund, that is for Parks and Recreation Department. Also, that is funded through the 1/2 cent Parks and Stormwater Sales Tax. And then the last one is the Sewer Improvement Fund, which pays for the sewer lateral program. When we compare that program to similar programs in other cities, we have concluded that our program tends to be richer. And the feedback that we get from residents is that it is well received. In 2012, the city increased the fee on that to $50 due to an increase in the number of sewer lateral repairs that we were having to do. This next slide is a pie chart that just shows you the different types of revenue sources by type. Sales tax is the highest, 51.95%. Second is the debt proceeds at 16.07, followed by intergovernmental at 7.75, licenses and permits, and then utility taxes. For the general fund, we are projecting a sales tax revenue growth of about 19.5%. The next 3 bullets shows how we arrive at that. Brentwood Square Series 2005 bonds retired early. We are projecting a growth of 9.5% from that. Retirement of the Brentwood Point Series 2005 paid off early 9 years, projecting a 7% growth from that, and then 3% in projected annual growth over and above fiscal year 14. And all of that is for sales tax. Also, next year, the Brentwood Community Center will remain closed for about 6 months to allow for the comprehensive renovation starting in April. Concurrently, the the revenues that we receive from the different programs at the community center during the time period where it will be shut down, we will see a 31% decrease in those revenues, but we anticipate that once we're back opened, we will continue to connect with our different patrons and seek new patrons so that we can start to grow that revenue once again. Also, because we now have ECDC dispatching service for the city, we will no longer receive revenue from Rock Hill for the service that we were dispatching for them before. Revenues generated from fines remain unchanged to the 2012 level. This next slide just shows the assessed valuation from 2006. It went up 2005, 2006, and then we had the downturn in the economy in 2008, and then it has dropped and then kind of flatlined ever since. Similar story for real estate and personal property taxes. It's zigzagged across the years from 2005 through present. We're seeing somewhat of a bump in 2014, where it's going to 286,364. This next slide just shows the different sales tax that the city collects. This is how we amass the total sales tax overall for the city. There's the local sales tax, and then the 4 local options, and the percentage which the city keeps, and the percentages that we share with pool cities. This next slide also may be a little difficult to see, but what that just shows you is over time what the expenditures have been for the different departments starting in 2013 through the budget for 14, estimated year end for 14, and then the budget for 2015, which is $24,064,354, and then we have 2 years projected expenditures. Where does the city spend its money? The top 5 departments are Parks and Recreation at 31.91%, Capital Improvement at 19.47%, the Police Department at 14.26%, the Fire Department at 10.64%, and Public Works at 7.21%. It's the same story when you look at all the different funds, whether it's general fund, whether it's stormwater and park improvements, whether it's sewer lateral. A majority of our expenses are in personnel, which is where we invest a lot of our money. We want to recruit the brightest and the best. We want the ability to retain them so that we don't have a revolving door. And how do you do that? Is by letting the employees know you appreciate the excellent service that they're providing to the citizens of this community.
Bola, just as a clarification on the last slide by department, that does not include salaries, right?
That's everything, total expenditures.
So the park department has a higher budget than...
Well, that also includes their capital. And this year, that increased significantly because of the community center.
Yep.
And this is for general fund. The authorized manpower decreased by 6, the 6 dispatchers. I believe I showed that earlier. I mentioned earlier that we're able to curtail the growth in general fund. In this budget, there is a 3% merit increase that employees would be eligible to receive based on performance. Our medical benefits increased, our premium increased by 7%, dental decreased by 8%, vision by 4%. Our loggers for non-public safety employees increased by 8.2%, which is a decrease from 10% last year. Workers' compensation increased, and then we've seen other moderate increases in other insurance premiums. The cost for participating in East Central Dispatch Center is $210,000. Also, in the police department, there is reorganization that is proposed. This will allow us to balance the ranking structure so that each shift will have an officer of rank in charge. We heard from the Public Works Committee, we heard from all the aldermen, that we heard from residents, the citizens, that there was need to invest more in our city infrastructure, our streets. And fortunately, because our fund balance continues to grow in a positive way, we were able to recommend that $250,000 be transferred from general fund reserves to the capital improvement. And we modeled that not just in 15, but in 16 and 17 as well. At the same time, even with this, our fund balance reserve continues to grow. Budget priorities for next year. We always have difficulty making sure that people hear when a speaker is up at the podium. So we would like to invest in a better audiovisual system for this room. We'd like to make sure that when someone's standing at the lectern, they're able to speak to the microphone without any direction on that we're quite familiar with. Also, we're recommending that we invest in a software that allows our building inspectors to be able to work more effectively in the field. It's called it's active code enforcement, whereby they're out in the field with the laptop, they can enter code violations, they can interact with the residents. Residents can go into the system, update, and request for a visit. At the same time, they can check on the status of different things that they are asking the city employees to follow through on. So it's called Request Tracker. They'll be able to monitor their request on an ongoing basis. We'd like to apply the same thing for permits and licenses. And vehicle telematics allows us to be able to have better safety records, ensure that our employees are driving more efficiently in a safe manner. We're able to track our assets. And since we completed the climate action plan, it will also allow us to be able to reduce our footprint by having cars out, at least going to places where they're supposed to be. So these are some of the things that we are planning for next year. About 2 meetings ago, the board approved the comprehensive plan, so we will be starting that in January, and we continue to look for alternatives on how to mitigate the floodwater on Manchester Road. Stormwater parks improvements. That slide shows sales tax continuing to grow, continued debt proceeds for the community center, intergovernmental receipt. We have applied for a grant through the Municipal Parks Grant Commission. We hope to know sometime early next year whether we receive that, and it seems very positive that we will. And then we've festival revenue for the annual Madden Fest. This pie chart is a little different based on the question the mayor asked me. Capital is high because we're investing in the community center. Then we have personnel services second, debt third, contractual services last. In the Parks Department, we propose to transfer 3 full-time employee maintenance staff from Public Works. They oversee facility maintenance of the community center. We feel that it is important and vital for them to report to the Parks and Rec Director, who will be overseeing their daily activity, then to report to the Public Works Superintendent. The expenses relating to these 3 positions will also be transferred to the Parks and Recreation Department. We continue to fund $75,000 for the stormwater mitigation plan. And in the Stormwater Parks Improvement Fund, their capital budget, those items are what is being proposed to be funded next year. The sewer lateral, that revenue can't really grow any more than that unless, I guess, new homes are built on double lots. 2 new homes are built on double lots. So it's very limited growth there. But a majority of that goes to the employees who provide that service, the sewer lateral service.
Are we at the top of the approved tax?
50.
Yes.
50, okay.
$50. Lastly is the capital improvement fund used for capital projects and to pay debt service. And those items, the value of the items that are funded in the capital improvement fund are at least $5,000 or greater. The city has a 5-year capital improvement project schedule. We allocate resources for investment in the infrastructure and equipment every year. Each year, staff conducts an assessment of every piece of equipment, and adjustments are made to the schedule before we present it to the board. Sales tax in the capital improvement project fund will increase by a little over $300,000 next year. We've budgeted $1.2 million for the Litzinger Road project. Intergovernmental receipts, also relating to that project, the city's local match and the city of Rock Hill's 25% contribution to the 20% local match. Also, we have the Hanley Industrial Pedestrian Project. If you recall, we had the Hanley Industrial Court Association and Pelagic agree to fund $25,000 and $50,000 to help the city to help us bring that project to fruition. Also, we are transferring reserves from the CIP in the amount of $323,354 so that we can continue to complete some of the more priority projects for the city. And then there's the $250,000 that I mentioned earlier. This next slide just shows the existing debt service from that fund. And these are items across all departments that we hope to fund next year. That's it.
Great. Anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. Let's move on to the bids when you're ready, Bola.
The first bid is for concrete materials. City issued a request for proposal. We had 4 companies respond. The Public Works Committee recommends the lowest and best value material, and if the concrete materials are not available, to make a purchase from Ranieri. You want me to read all of this?
Well, don't you just have the lump sum prices on that or not?
It's a broken out spreadsheet.
Okay,
Valley
well then
material.
I would at least submit that into the record so we have those in, the bids, the individual bids.
Okay.
Give the names of the people that responded though, or businesses.
Okay. Brentwood, Breckenridge Material Company, Landvater, Ready Mix, Ranieri, and Valley Material Company.
Okay, thank you.
The second item is for earthen materials. City issued a request for that. 3 companies responded: Brentwood Building Supply, Brentwood Material, and Fred Weber. Public Works Committee recommends that for 3/4 inch minus rock, excuse me. Right, for 3/4 inch minus rock and the 1 inch clean rock, Fred Weber offered the best pricing. They're also asking for a 2.5 increase in their contract price for every year after the initial year. Fred Weber did not offer any other quotes on the remaining earthen materials. And then for the remaining items, the river sand, topsoil, and mulch material, Brentwood Material Company also requests a 2% increase for every year after the initial contract year, and they offered the best and lowest bid on those items. And the last item, which is the asphalt materials, we had 2 companies that responded. Fred Weber has a plant in Maryland Heights and a plant in Kings Highway, and then there's MB West Contracting that is located here in town. MB West did not offer a quote on the driveway mix, the commercial C mix driveway mix, the asphalt X mix, asphalt curb mix. They only submitted a quote on the cold patch mix. And the recommendation is that they be awarded the contract for the cold patch mix. And then for the remaining items, the Public Works Committee recommends that the lowest and best was submitted by Fred Weber out of the Maryland Heights plant location.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, thank you. Next item, hearing of any matters of public interest upon anybody present. If anybody'd like to address the board, please come forward and give us your name and address.
Denise Sebbing, and I live in 2612 Porter, and I have some more pictures to share with the board. This is the 3rd time I've brought pictures of signs and things that, just driving around in the area, that I've noticed where speeding signs or crosswalk signs have been covered by foliage. I thought after the last couple of conversations that some of the public works folks were going to be more attentive to those types of situations. The first picture you see there is on White, right by the high school, not far from where I had just brought some of these things a couple months ago. The second one is right there at McKnight and White. There's a crosswalk. You can see you're just 15 feet away and you can't even see the crosswalk site. These are safety issues, and it kind of goes to the fact that I know, Bola, in your conversation about how to improve things that you're looking at, one of the things, the matrix on how to be more efficient, more effective, one of the things I would ask is maybe, build something in that metric that some of the people that are driving around doing their normal jobs, whether it's picking up the trash or, whatever they're doing, that they look at these things and notice these things so the residents aren't having to do this. It's not my job to do this. I literally took this in 5 minutes just driving down 2 streets, and I took it with my phone camera. So it's not that difficult to spot these things. I would hope that the people that are working for us, if so many of these people are making top dollar, why aren't we getting the top service for this kinds of pay? These are little things, but it's all these little things that make our community a better community or not. I will mention one of the things that we were out of town for a couple of weeks and came back, and our street's a cement street. It's a newer street. We're not going to have it, covered or paved for a long time. We're way down at the bottom of the list for any improvements, and that's fine. But we come back and there's all kinds of tar. Somebody had a tar bucket and has tar going all up and down, streaks of tar on our street. We did contact the city, and Kevin, to his credit, returned our call the same day that we called, which was somewhat surprising, happily surprising. But he said he had become aware that it had been there for 2 weeks and nobody reported it. Frank, you live right there. You see it. You go up and down the street. You work with the city. Nobody else had reported it. It's not up to us to have to constantly report these things. I mean, this is, people need to be more observant who are working for the city. Take some pride in the city so that the residents aren't always having to do that. Another item I'd like to ask is, it's concerning the Scott Rosenblum DWI case, and just a couple of questions. Why did Mike Shelton excuse himself from that case? And I don't know that you can tell me that or not, but I'm curious as to why he excused himself. He's our normal prosecuting attorney. I was wondering why he excused himself. And then secondly, who appointed the special prosecuting attorney, Tim Engelmeyer. I'm just curious as to why we had to have a special prosecuting attorney and who made that decision. One of the things I thought interesting is that Mike and Tim both went to University of Arizona at the same time, so I was wondering if there's some kind of connection there, or
Yeah, I think they
what.
worked it out back then. Yeah.
Pardon?
Never mind.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I thought they worked it out back then when they were in college, but that's fine.
Well, no, I'm saying that I'm
Apologize,
trying to,
sorry.
what's the process in determining when a special prosecutor has to be brought in and not? Because it seems like there was a little bit of special treatment there, and I was just curious as to how that took place and how that came down. Next, Andy Leahy, just curious, when people try to contact you by email on the City of Brentwood email address, they're directed to go to your work address. I don't know that anybody else on the board does that. I know actually, Mr. Mayor, you require that people not send you email to your work environment. You prefer it, and I think one of the reasonings was because you felt like that was city business, shouldn't be sent to a private company. And I guess my concern is if it's the case for the mayor and most of the other Board of Aldermen, why do you not have us, as residents, you're our ward alderman, why can we not contact you through the city email address or your home email address? It's a simple question, and we've been asking that, and I was hoping not to have to bring it to here to ask that question in public, but I don't understand. It seems to me if it's a concern for the mayor not to have city business conducted over his company email, why do you ask us to? I mean, best practices, most employers don't want people to have their company email used for other business. A couple of other things that I have is that we're still...
You're getting closer. You got about 30 more seconds.
Okay, I'll speak quickly. A couple of follow-ups. I'm hoping that Justin can get back to us about the status of the boards at Manchester and Brentwood, Manchester and Hanley. Those boards are looking extremely shabby. That whole area is looking shabby. I was wondering, Bola, you had some Route 66 signs that you were hoping that we could get, like Maplewood. I do want to thank Chief Fitzgerald for helping to get the trash can, the waste can by the bus stop on Manchester. Seems to have substantially decreased the trash. I would ask that we get an update as far as the bus metro mesh trash can by that. So just follow-ups. These are the things, they're little things, but they all add up to expectations of the residents. Thank you.
Karen Smith Harrison. I think you're going to be discussing the signage bill, and I had requested a copy of the current ordinance on signs so that I could understand the changes that were being made. So I really can't comment on that. I would have liked to have. I'm a little concerned in reading the current bill that just making sure that we're not limiting freedom of speech, and also for businesses to be able to best position, their business. So that's in relation to signage, and then I still would like to see what the current signage bill is, and if I can get that in a Word document, I can do a compare against the current ordinances that's before you, that you all are going to be voting on, that I'm not able to really comment on. And then another comment I was going to make in regards to, I guess that individual's name is Jim Leahy. I appreciated his insights, but I think it's important that we all understand that his job and his expertise is in economic development. So of course he is going to be, that's going to be his area of emphasis. In discussing with others outside of the city of Brentwood, including individuals at East West Gateway, an auditor, and some economists, the one comment they always had is when they looked at what was going on in Brentwood, just so that I could better understand, was the amount of leverage that was in this area. We are a highly leveraged area, and that was a little bit of a concern for them. And so that's just something for us to think about going forward. There's a lot of debt that flows through this 2-mile area. And just as a point of reference, the city of Detroit, I think most of you are aware of, there have been through recent bankruptcy proceedings. And although a lot of people attribute their issues, due to the decline in manufacturing in this country, recent studies have really shown that the final nail in their coffin was attributed to some risky investments that they've made and the amount of leverage that city was carrying. And I know with a lot of these TIFs and TDDs that we are not on the hook for that because the actual developments are on the hook for it. But overall, from a community perspective, it doesn't look good. And I definitely support economic development, but I agree with the comment that was made later that we need to make sure that that's a balance for our city. And I was unclear with the answer that he gave in regards to the Meridian. If those bonds are not paid off when the TIF retires in 2023, how does that impact the city's credit rating? Because although we're not responsible if that bond doesn't get paid off, those bonds were floated by our city. So I'm just wondering if that would impact our overall credit rating. And since we have worked so hard to have such a good one, it would be unfortunate if we go down as a result of that. Thank you.
David Dimmitt, 9104 Pine. I'd like to address you this evening on the topic of reducing the terms of office from 4 years to 2 years. In a little more than, in February of this year, the mayor and I discussed at one of the coffees with the mayor the possibility of reducing the terms and how some people, take my word for it, hopefully, in Brentwood are in favor of doing just that. And the thought is, when we increase them from 2 years to 4 years, maybe we made a mistake, and we'd like to see about what we can do about reducing them back to 2 years. And it's been a long process. It's my understanding that it is on the agenda, at least for tonight. And I'm speaking in favor of doing that, reducing it from 4 years to 2 years. I understand there are arguments both ways, but I think if we look at and consider the benefits of the 2 year versus the 4 years, the 2 years tip the scale a little bit in favor of doing that. Number one, I think the 2 years results in our elected officials being responsive. I'm not suggesting that they aren't responsive now to their constituents, but I think it certainly guarantees that a 2 year term will ensure some continued responsiveness if the elected officials know that they have to run for re-election in 2 years instead of 4 years. Secondly, I've heard that some of the arguments in maintaining or in keeping the 4 years is that there is a learning curve, if you will, for newly elected officials. It takes 4 years or 3 years for them to understand the process, and I get that, I appreciate that. Having never held an elected office before, I can't even begin to imagine how much work there is to get brought up to speed, and so I do understand that. But I also understand that after 2 years, it doesn't mean you have to start all over again. You have that benefit of having those 2 years of experience. And if someone should choose to run against you, you have that to go against your opponent. And finally, the other argument I've heard in favor of maintaining the 4 years is that the concern is if we go with a 2 year, it's a hardship for the person running for the office because of the money that has to be raised to run for the office. I guess I would counter that by saying, to the extent you are responsive to your constituents, you probably won't have any legitimate challengers to that office. So thank you for your time.
Okay, we'll close public comment. I'll try to address at least two of those items. One, with respect to the city's credit rating with the TIF bonds or TDDs, the reason that doesn't affect the city's borrowing rating is because they're not obligations of the city. In the situation with the Meridian, at the end of the day, it's either going to be the developer or the bank that owns those bonds because of the assurance that the city required when we entered into that project. So it does not affect the city's credit rating. there was, with respect to Mike Shelton and the pending case that was here at the City of Brentwood, to Mike's credit, he asked that we find a special prosecutor for that case because he knew the attorney in question and had worked with him on a number of occasions and didn't feel it was appropriate for him to handle that case. We had the recommendations of a few attorneys, and Frank, maybe if you give us the qualifications of the one that we selected.
Tim Engelmeyer, we actually had several attorneys. Tim Engelmeyer has extensive experience both as a judge and a prosecutor in municipalities, and he's got experience in dealing with somewhat high-profile cases. Mike was not consulted on the selection of that. My recommendations were made to the board, and the board selected the prosecutor.
Right, and I thought it went pretty well. My contention would be that if it weren't for the high profile of it, that actually in this situation, from what I understand, because of his the publicity around it was probably he had a little bit harsher with some of his hours of service that he has to participate in and so forth than somebody else in a first case situation of this kind. So I thought it went very well. I think the judge did a good job, and our special counsel did as well. So really that's a process that as elected officials we need to stay out of as much as possible. Stay out of the courts and let the court system run their processes as a separate entity. So that's the way that was handled. Okay, if I can have a motion for the, I'm sorry, Alderman.
Could we not have a break?
Sure, why don't we take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back at 9:10.
2 hours, 15 minutes.
Does not. I don't have a full board.
Nah, they gotta get here.
I'm missing 2. I'm missing 1.
No, I mean,
Okay, we got them.
many of them. I figured it'd be anywhere.
Okay, if I can have a motion for the first and second readings of bills number 5896, 5933, 5934, 5935, 5936, 37, 38, 39, and 40. This is for the first and second readings only.
So moved, Your Honor.
And second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. First reading of bill number 5896.
First reading bill number 5896 by title only, an ordinance amending Chapter 8 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City of Brentwood, Missouri by deleting Section 8-2 in its entirety and enacting in lieu thereof a new Section 8-2 as it relates to election of officers generally, providing for the current maintenance of this code, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances.
Okay. So this is the ordinance that would allow, and we did receive a letter from the Attorney General saying that the Board of Aldermen does have the ability to change this back to 2 years. And this ordinance would change both the mayor and the Board of Aldermen terms back to 2-year terms. This would be the perfect time to do that. It would get us back into that 2-year cycle, and I believe it's the appropriate thing to do. That's why I introduced the bill like 6 months ago or whenever it was. So, Alderman Leahy.
A couple of things, Your Honor, if I may. Based on the last meeting of the Board of Aldermen, we did pass the new Code of Ordinances. I will respectfully request that the board allow this to go through as written, but make it effective to the new code. We would be repealing Section 105.020 on page 5 of the new code is the section that comes out, and this would go in its place. This will give the city staff a chance to catch up with some of the bills that are still processing through, but were written originally under the old code that we have to make the adjustment. The letter that we received from the Attorney General established that since the voters voted to make it a 4-year term for the elected officials, and the board then passed an ordinance that allowed it to happen, the board is authorized to repeal that ordinance and go back to the 2-year term. I do agree with Mr. Dermott that going to the 2-year term does hold the elected officials much more accountable and much more responsive to the citizenry. and would really request that all the board members consider seriously getting on board and supporting this change to work with. By passing it this evening, so voted on, this would be effective for the defilings that don't start until the 13th of December. I would like, if I may, Your Honor, to amend this bill. There are 3 elected official positions, the mayor, the alderman, but also the city municipal judge. The board also passed an ordinance moving his term, or that term, to a 4-year term based on ordinance with no vote to the citizens. It would be my request that all elected officials go to a 2-year term. And I'd like to make that motion at this time to amend Bill 5896 to include the term all elected officials.
It's
It's in section 8.2.
Municipal judges listed.
It's in there. I'm sorry, the municipal judge is on line 4. It is. Thank you. Super. Then I withdraw the amendment.
Okay. So is that a motion?
Motion? No, we have to have a second reading.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Alderman Sanders.
I agree with the 2-year terms. I did not vote for the 4-year terms. I actually even emailed Alderman Leahy on that because at the time, the reason is with Class 4 cities, you do not have the initiative, the power of referendum. So through a petition process similar to what we were able to do with the state audit, and that's granted to all cities, but in other cities, such as charter cities and third-class cities, you can, if you get a certain number of signatures, you can put an issue on the ballot, similar to the way Maplewood put the Quick Trip issue onto the ballot because they were not satisfied with how the board voted. And it takes a lot of work. So that initiative process alone holds this board accountable and to be transparent because we want to bring you on board because we don't want you overriding our decisions. The problem is that since that isn't granted to 4th-class cities, that is the reason for the 2-year terms. That way, if the board is headed in a direction that we're not happy with, then you can turn over the board before too much damage, if you think, is done. So that is why I voted originally against the 4-year terms. And since being on the board, there is a learning curve, and I do agree about if you're responsive to your residents. But another discouraging thing is if you run for office and you receive anonymous packages, cane mutiny, jars of jam, dead possums on your porch, threatening letters, disparaging flyers sent out randomly to only certain targeted people. If you go through something that grueling, you want to do it again in 2 years, it really is very discouraging. And it's not the first time it's happened in this city. And so that's what makes it difficult to run for office every 2 years. When the mayor and some of this board proposed to go to the 4-year terms, it was to save money because the cost of the elections are expensive for the city. I am fine going back to 2-year terms because we do not have that initiative power. But let me tell you, it's not how responsive you are to your residents if you're receiving packages and threats. It's ridiculous. So I hope in this upcoming election we do not see any of that, especially someone running that is new, never been in office, and to be targeted by somebody that lives in Ladue. And yet the city didn't want to investigate any further.
Mayor?
Alderman Nguyen.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you found that to be true, and I'm sure you did. But I ran for office 13 times and won, actually 11 of them. I've never, ever found anybody in Ward 2 ever sent me anything negative. I remember a couple of times in the street somebody saying something to me, but I found it to be uplifting. I'm not doubting your word, don't understand. I'm in a different area. But I've never had a problem that way. And the times I lost, 2 times I lost, it was great. I mean, it was great losing, but it was great that people treated me as they did. And the 11 times that I won, That was, of course, great, too. But I found the people in Brentwood, at least in my neighborhood, or around me, were very wonderful in all the elections. I went door to door. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, if you ever go up Pine Avenue on that one block, it'll wear you out, because you got to go all the way up to the door and come all the way back down. That's why 81 is my last term, I think, one of the reasons. No, I just think Brentwood, and I think Maureen would agree to this, it's a great city. I was treated well, and I'm sorry that somebody had to act like that.
Well, the
I never
residents-
found that to be true.
Alderman Nguyen, the residents treated me great. I mean, they put me in this seat with like a 65 or 66% mandate. They were great. But where did this come from? When you ask tough questions, you are a target from some. I mean, Jamboret's accused employees and other individuals involved in sending these packages.
Well,
And even the federal prosecutor, when I brought the packages down to him, said, for a Ward 1 aldermanic seat, why don't they want you in this office?
Well, it's not just you, and it's not the first time it's happened in the city of Brentwood.
No.
I've had my house egged. I've had whiskey bottles broken in my driveway when I've come out in the morning. I've had life insurance policies mailed to my house with my kids' names on it. Over the years, we've had a number of things like that. So I've always found that it's just best to ignore them, and I have reported a couple of to the police, but don't be fooled or don't be naive enough to think that you're the only one that those kinds of things has happened to over the years.
I said it happened to
it's
others.
It's unfortunate whenever you step into a position of being in front of the community, and it's just something that happens, or even having your kids beat up at school because their dad's the mayor. Things like that happen. So. You just have to move on if you think the position and the community is worth it.
Well, I just wanted to say this, Mayor, that I'm just trying to give you what my heart says about the experience.
And I agree, and that's
don't
what, I just don't want this to be.
I know, and you've had a different experience, but I also don't want anybody. Well, of course, if they're going to back off, they really didn't want to run anyway, because you run because you want to run. That's the reason. But I found it to be a very wonderful experience. That's all I know.
Depends on which way you want to run.
How fast you are.
Okay. Can we have the second reading, please?
Second reading, Bill Number 5896 by title only, an ordinance amending Chapter 8 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City of Brentwood, Missouri by deleting Section 8-2 in its entirety and enacting in lieu thereof a new Section 8-2 as it relates to election of officers generally, providing for the current maintenance of this code, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and providing for the repeal of all conflicting ordinances.
Thank you. Do you have a motion?
I have one question.
Alderman Sanders.
I just wanted to clarify, too, Alderman Kramer was concerned about overriding the vote of the people when they voted to go to the 4-year terms. But in asking the Attorney General, they said it is not permitted in a fourth-class city to go back to the voters. And considering the circumstances that we have not gotten the right of referendum, or people refer to it different things, the recall or petition process, that's on the state. When they allowed fourth-class cities to go to 4-year terms, they should have also granted us that same right as a Class 4 city. But I did want to clarify that, because that was my concern, is should we go back to the voters? But since it's a Class 4 city, he said there's no referendum.
The statute makes provision for going to a 4-year term to the voters. It does not make any provision for going back to the voters. Yep. That was my concern with this from the outset, and the Attorney General confirmed that by saying it's within the discretion of the board to repeal the prior ordinance.
Because even after it goes to a vote of the residents, it says after it's voted upon that the Board of Aldermen may go to the 4-year term. Which it doesn't say shall go. So it gives us the leeway to go forward, and then by not using the word shall, gives us the ability to go back as well. So with that, do we have a motion to?
So moved.
And second?
Second, Your Honor.
Motion made by Alderman Nguyen, second by Alderman Leahy. Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper?
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes.
Alderman Robertson?
Yes.
Alderman Toohey?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderman Manister?
Yes.
Alderman Saunders?
Yes.
Bill number 5896 is now ordinance number 4590.
Thank you. First reading of bill number 5933.
First reading bill number 33 by title only, an ordinance adopting the annual budget for the city of Brentwood for the calendar year 2015 and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Again, this is just our annual budget, which you had the presentation. Any questions? Alderman Lee?
Your Honor, as I understand the proposed budget, we do have money in this proposed budget that would be allowing the board to raise those employees that are under the market ranges and to bring them up to market range. And that's funded in the budget. I'd like to amend the budget that until the Ways and Means Committee gets a chance to review how we're going to do the pay raises and everything for the 2015-16 arrangement, that we not act on that money until we come back with a comprehensive policy of how best to apply it. So I would ask that we freeze, I think it's a total of $25,000 that we put into the budget to possibly do those adjustments, freeze those until the Ways and Means Committee has had a chance to work through the compensation and paying arrangement.
You don't need to freeze them because we're going to have to, those discussions have to be had before we do that, just as, you know, the compensation process going forward is, you know, a number of these things can be phased in as they go along.
Correct.
But, yeah, we're going to have those discussions before they happen. There's no reason to freeze it.
Well, what I would like to do is make sure that if we pass the budget, because it was in the budget, it isn't automatically approved that we go work in that direction.
We can't arbitrarily adopt a step plan on our own.
That's a policy, right.
Thank you. That's where I was trying to at least get that on the record.
Okay.
Super.
Do you have
first
Alderman
reading
Saunders?
Just one, I had asked Bulla, and if it's okay to the board, that, so we're clear, because it always seems confusing when we have that step plan in the introduction, that we go ahead as an appendix, put the current grade plan in there, so we know we're working from that.
The current what?
The current step plan, because it's referred to.
You mean the pay ranges?
Yes, the grades.
Well,
I emailed Bulla several times.
You have it there.
Right.
It's in yellow and red.
Right, this right here.
Yeah. You want those?
Yes,
Okay.
that this become the appendix for this budget, because the budget says that we are going to have 3%, a 3% merit increase and a continued implementation of the STEP pay plan, which is based on performance and success outcome of a performance review. So I emailed Bulla today, and I was instructed at our Ways and Means meeting that the way the 3% works is if you're doing poorly and you only get 1%, you only go up one, I don't want to know what you want to call it, step, grade, level, I've heard so many different things, one level. If you get the full 3%, you go up 3 on this current plan, you know, and if you...
So why does that need to be in the budget?
Because it's confusing with referring to step plans, it's very confusing as to whether we're talking about proposed step plans or this step plan.
Well, it's a current plan that we've been using for the past 20 years, so.
Does anyone have a problem if we just add this to the budget as an appendix?
And what?
Just the step plan. I mean, it references what's in the budget. Is that
The pay levels.
the pay levels?
The ranges.
Yeah.
The ranges. I make a motion that we add this current ranges, the current existing pay plan, because that's what we're basing this budget on, into the budget, the proposed 2015 budget.
One second.
I mean, all it is a tabulation. It doesn't tell what employee is within what range,
No.
what positions within what range. All it is a spreadsheet with numbers on it, but
It
that's fine.
just
if
states
you
that
wanna
this
put
is the step plan we're using. This is what we refer to currently as a step plan.
Well, it's it's our ranges. That's, I think, the difference is when we get these,
Well,
how we've been
okay,
getting
then clarify.
Okay,
a
we had a
continued
first and a
well,
second.
Wait, can you clarify a continued implementation of the step pay plan?
Well, that was Bola's terminology. I would not have used step plan. I mean, again, there's different, that is the ranges that the city's been using for years. And I think the step plan is what we referred to when I introduced the step plan for the fire and police department. You know, I guess you could use that terminology, but these are the pay ranges. There's a lot more of them, you know, if we want to, you want to put it in there, it's fine, but it really doesn't add anything to the budget because it doesn't tell what job classifications are within those pay ranges. Whether all it is a 1 to 30 and an A to Z or whatever it is. So if you want to put it in there, it's going to mean nothing to anybody that's looking at the budget.
I just have one more.
Alderman Saunders.
When you came to Ways and Means a year and a half ago, this same verbiage was in the budget, and that was the confusion of Ways and Means. I'm like, what step plan are we currently putting in the budget? And you were uncertain because maybe you don't agree with the language, but I think we need to know what we're referencing when we're proposing something in a budget. And as far as I could understand, Bola was referencing this document. That's what I was told.
Mm-hmm. Okay, roll call.
Can you tell me who seconded the motion?
Cindy.
Cindy did.
This is Manister.
Yeah, just to put that in his appendix.
Alderman Harper?
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen?
No.
Alderman Robinson?
No.
Alderman Tui?
No.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister?
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders?
Yes.
Okay. All right, do we have second reading?
No, we have not.
Okay, second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill number 5933 by title only, an ordinance adopting the annual budget for the city of Brentwood for the calendar year 2015 and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to perfect Bill 5933 into ordinance form.
And a second.
Second.
Alderman Sanders.
I wanted to thank Bola for listening, I know, in all the departments, but for modeling in the additional $250,000 so that more streets will be repaired in 2015. I'm excited about that. And I also wanted to ask, it's not in here, but just like the tablets, if there's some savings or a way in the capital budget, if we have some leeway, we talked about this before, but getting a sign out in front of City Hall would be ideal. We maybe be able to use the Brentwood Rec, but that shows when the meetings are, and you know, that's more visible for the public as a reminder. I know this has been, Alderman Leahy said, presented to this board in the past, and I don't know if it just got dropped or what, but I think it would be very beneficial. I think we see a lot of cities have these signs, and I know there's some upgrades going to happen in the sign ordinance, and it would be nice to have one of these monument signs so that the public knows when the meetings are, can drive by and see that. And then the other thing is, we'll just, it's, you know, difficult to look at compensation. We only received the compensation plan in November, and it's a very difficult topic, as you can tell. It's unfortunate it didn't pass earlier in the year, but one of the aldermen changed his vote, so it eventually passed, but once again, you can't be delivered that amount of information and make a rash decision in just one or two quick meetings. So I'm excited that the mayor was for having a workshop to discuss the compensation survey.
Okay.
Something I'm going to
go ahead.
Something to maybe consider. It's a small budget item. New seats in the chamber, because those things are pretty painful to sit on, and I think a lot of the residents would actually appreciate something different.
Well, there's a reason for that. You don't want them to be. That was just too easy.
We've had a motion and a second. Can we call the question, please?
Pretty soon we're going to have to get recliners with vibrators in it. Okay. All right. We voted.
Motion and a second.
Thank
We
you.
haven't voted yet.
Okay, roll call.
Alderman,
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes.
Alderman Robinson?
Yes.
Alderman Tui?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister?
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders?
Yes.
Bill number 5933 is now ordinance number 4591.
Okay, thank you. First reading of bill number 5934.
First reading Bill number 5934 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an authorized provider agreement on behalf of the city of Brentwood, Missouri with American National Red Cross and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay.
Do you want a synopsis?
Yeah, I'll get, this bill is for an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or the city administrator to execute an authorized provider agreement between the city of Brentwood, American Red Cross, listing Brentwood Community Center as a facility location and Samantha Simons as a certified instructor. So, any questions? Second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill number 5934 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an authorized provider agreement on behalf of the city of Brentwood, Missouri with American National Red Cross and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion.
Motion to perfect Bill 5934 into ordinance form.
Okay, and a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Harper?
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes.
Alderman Robinson?
Yes.
Alderman Tui?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bannister?
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders?
Yes.
Bill number 5934 is now ordinance number 4592.
Okay, thank you. First reading of bill number 5935.
The first reading Bill number 5935 by title only, an ordinance granting amended site plan approval to Carboline for exterior A building addition and related site improvements of property numbered 350 Hanley Industrial Court, which permits under the provisions of Chapter 25 of the Brentwood Code of Ordinances the development of that site, providing the conditions of such development, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. This is for our site plan, some addition that Carboline is doing at their location down in Hanley Industrial Court. Anybody have any questions? Alderwoman Saunders.
I have some concerns with the sound study. And I guess the one item, I don't know, Justin, if that would be you that I direct to, but if you look at this circular diagram that we were provided, there's not a page number, I would help you. It shows the location of Carboline, but it doesn't show the location of the other buildings that would be impacted by this noise. And I know that the ones at the end, if you also look at the data that shows the dBi, like the average, what it is at ambient noise presently, and then I guess the noise level when this fire testing is in operation, naturally it's greater if it's, to the northwest, because the blower is 2/3 up the northeast side of the building. And some of them are, it's considerably higher when it's in operation. And I'm a little concerned. I know we've had sound issues, and I don't know that it's reverberating up all the way to where the residential's, but I am even concerned about the other residents, other businesses, whether they'll like that increased noise. I don't know what it'll do for Art Mart. That's considerably over, in my opinion, the ambient noise level. And then also, too, I don't know, this data was collected between 9:15 and 1:30. I don't know the operation, the hours that this fire chamber thing will be operating. But, and also, the last question is, how do we determine the noise level in operation? Because do we have a fire?
So I think the first part to clarify about this is the operation that is going to be housed in this new addition currently exists on the site.
Right.
So they're building a new addition and they're kind of expanding their capabilities within the existing site. And if you look at the last page on the sound study, that's essentially what that's showing is it's not new noise, it's a shift in the noise based off of where they're moving the equipment to. So you see that minor shift from the dash line to the solid line. So that's the impact of the noise in the sound study that it's trying to show. As far as, again, the operation, they currently do it in several smaller portions around their site. They're looking to consolidate it into this newer building as well. Essentially what it allows them to do is to test larger pieces of equipment that they currently have to ship to, I believe it's out in Chicago where they do it.
I understand the shift. I saw that. The reason with the shift, though, is the other diagram at least kind of lets you know how much, you know what I mean, how much more noise, additional noise they're going to get. Is that correct? Am I reading that right? Like how much louder it'll be?
I don't think that that's
DBAs?
necessarily how much louder it will be. Well,
how much additional DBAs?
So at 370 feet, yeah, correct. So at 370 feet, it's an increase of 1.5 decibels. At 279 feet, they're at about 1 decibel. So yeah, I mean, it shows that change in decibels.
Okay,
Is that change, or is that just what the level is? I mean, again, they're doing it today. Is it an increase over what they're doing it today,
Well,
or is it?
I think if we're talking about a football field and a half away, a change of 1 decibel,
Is it a change, or is it what they're
Well,
actually doing today?
the applicant's here and they can probably
yeah.
speak.
Like it says rooftop of building north of source. It's going to go from 58 to 60 ambient dBA to 68, 69. I mean, I realize that's rooftop, but it says building north of source.
Yeah.
And then on ground level north of source, it goes from like 45 to 47, and it jumps up to 55, 56.
But it's allowed to go to 95 under your current code.
Oh.
You're allowed 95 as your max.
Okay.
To work with. So none of these move it up to anywhere near that level.
Right.
But yes, you'll have noise. What he's doing is just shifting the production.
Okay, go ahead. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Ed Taylor. I'm the manager of the fireproofing laboratory at Carbon. I did these sound studies because there was a question about them in the P&Z meetings. So what we essentially did is I went out and took ambient noise levels without anything running. And I think I gave you the time of day. It was 9:35 or something like that. Somewhere we did a 2-hour study, and we went to certain points around our business, around our campus. It extended all the way up past Art Mart to Hanley Road. Went all the way up to Hanley and Hanley Industrial Court, Litzinger, and Hanley, and then down around. The first set of numbers that you see there are the ambient noise levels. Then what we did is I went up onto the top of the building where the sound source is for this system and radiated out from there to those same positions and took sound levels while the equipment was running. And what you're seeing there is the increase over the ambient noise levels. I'm trying to get close. Increase over the ambient noise levels. That's attributed to the piece of equipment running. So if you look out at, let's say, Litzinger and Hanley, you'll see really there's no increase over ambient noise levels. If you look down towards our building more, down at about let's say that halfway down our building, if you go on this map, it's southeast, but it's not where it is. It's actually northwest. If you go halfway down our building, 120 feet away from the sound source, it's only up 6 decibels, the noise increase. Mm-hmm. Now, the new building will have the sound source actually down lower to the ground. This is up high. This is actually going to be blocked but more by hills and buildings and those types of things, rather than it being up high right now. It's probably at about 20 feet above ground level. So it can radiate out freely in all directions. The newer building is going to have things down closer to the ground. Okay. The sound source won't be any higher in sound than the one we currently have because it's not allowed to be by OSHA regulations.
Okay.
And what I tried to do...
I'm not trying to be difficult.
No,
We've had sound issues
this is
before.
fine. This is fine. So, is there anything else?
Well, for instance, if you look at...
1 second. Kevin, did you need to switch?
No, I was just going to offer a bit of perspective. The human ear will not perceive any difference in value at less than 2 decibels. So it takes 2 decibels for you to even notice a change in volume.
Okay.
You're not talking about much at all.
I work with sound a lot because I have to do sound studies and safety evaluations for processes around where we work. And I had this sound level meter in my car. I wanted to know what the sound level was in my car. And driving down Brentwood Boulevard at 25 miles an hour in a brand new car, my sound level with the air conditioner on 4 and no radio was 65 decibels. I couldn't believe that.
Okay. And you
I
can
thought to
understand
myself,
that that
I better
helped.
think.
Well, that's because Brentwood Boulevard's so rough that you.
But you know, an idling car, my idling car was 45.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin, too. That was
That's a
helpful
county
for
road,
me,
by the way.
'cause Can I ask, though, so as a result of this, do you anticipate, you can see, the areas where it shifts and what businesses are involved?
Right.
Do you anticipate them hearing any difference, really?
I do not. No.
Okay.
I do not.
Okay. And if we receive complaints, you're prepared to?
Well, there's ways to, we've been talking to our people that are going to be putting this up, and if we have to dampen the sound, there are ways to dampen the sound with structure and sound batting.
Around your pipes.
Around the motor that would be causing that would be causing the sound, correct.
Okay. And P&Z was fine, straight across the board?
Correct. I believe I think it was 9-0, they recommended approval.
Okay, I just want to make sure, since, we have existing, that we're good to the neighbors and.
Absolutely. We try to be good. We try to be good neighbors with everybody.
Okay, great, thank you.
That it?
Second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill number 5935 by title only, an ordinance granting amended site plan approval to Carboline for exterior A building addition and related site improvements at property number 350 Hanley Industrial Court, which permits under the provisions of Chapter 25 of the Brentwood Code of Ordinances development of that site, providing the conditions of such development, and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay.
Motion to perfect Bill 5935 into ordinance form, Your Honor.
Second.
We have first and a second to approve 5935 into ordinance form. Roll call, please.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes.
Alderman Robertson?
Yes.
Alderman Tui?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderman Manister?
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders?
Yes, and I forgot to say thank you for the detailed sound study.
Bill number 5935 is now ordinance number 4593.
Okay, first reading bill number 5936, please.
First reading, Bill number 5936 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with Valley Material Company and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Again, the next few ordinances are just the bids that we had earlier for some of our public works supplies throughout the next year. So, any questions? Second reading.
Second reading, Bill number 5936 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with Valley Material Company and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Have a motion, please.
Move for adoption, Your Honor.
Second.
Had a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes.
Alderman Robertson?
Yes.
Alderman Tui?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister?
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders?
Yes,
Bill number 5936 is now ordinance number 4594.
First reading of bill number 5937.
First reading, Bill number 5937 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with Ranieri Building Materials and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Again, this is for supplies for public works. Second reading, please.
Second reading, Bill number 5937 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with Ranieri Building Materials and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay.
Motion to perfect Bill 5937 into ordinance form.
Second.
We had a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Nguyen?
Yes.
Alderman Robertson?
Yes.
Alderman Tui?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister?
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders?
yes,
Bill number 5937 is now ordinance number 4595.
Thank you. First reading Bill Number 5938.
First reading Bill Number 5938 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with Fred Weber, Inc., and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Second reading, please.
Second reading Bill 5938 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with Fred Weber, Inc., and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay.
Motion to perfect Bill 5938 into ordinance form.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Manister.
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Bill number 5938 is now ordinance number 4596.
Thank you. First reading Bill Number 5939.
First reading Bill Number 5939 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with MB West Contracting Company and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Second reading, please.
Second reading Bill Number 5939 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with MB West Contracting Company and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay.
Move for adoption, Your Honor.
Second.
Second, Your Honor.
Roll call.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Bill number 5939 is now ordinance number 4597.
Thank you. First reading Bill Number 5940.
First reading Bill Number 5940 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with Fred Weber, Inc., and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Second reading, please.
Second reading Bill Number 5940 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and/or city administrator to enter into and execute an agreement with Fred Weber, Inc., and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay.
Motion for approval, Your Honor.
And second.
Second.
Okay, the first and second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Bill number 5940 is now ordinance number 4598.
Okay, thank you. The reason 5941, we had the wrong name in there, said Brentwood Building Supply, it should have been Brentwood Material, so we'll bring that back next meeting. Resolution 1023 for the general election, April 7th, 2015, and this is for the establishment of our election for alderman and mayor in 2015.
Your Honor.
Alderman Leahy.
Does this resolution need to be amended to rescind Resolution 1021, which we passed last meeting for the four-year term election?
It should supersede it, but in an abundance of caution, if you'd like to amend it to specifically rescind it.
Repeal Resolution 1021 and put this as the override. I'd like to make that amendment, Your Honor.
Okay. Everybody understand that?
Yes.
All in favor of that change?
Aye.
I'm sorry, do we have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And
Motion to approve Resolution 1023 as amended.
Okay, and second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is Resolution 1024, resolution of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, adopting a Title VI non-discrimination plan. Bola, is this just an update, or is it?
We're going to make some minor changes. MoDOT hired a consultant to review Title VI policy document that the city adopted last year, and there were some areas where we are deficient, so we've made that correction, and we're bringing it back to the board for your consideration.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Motion to approve
Thank you.
Resolution 1024.
And second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, counts against the city. Bola, do you?
I shared this with Alderman Kramer, and he recommends its approval. He will be back later this week.
Well, that's nice since he's not here, so would somebody else like to make that recommendation?
Motion to approve the warrant list in the tune of $544,000 $945.45 so that we can pay the bills.
I just have one question.
Alderman Sanders. Well, do we have a second first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Second.
Okay. Alderman Sanders.
Just the question, game time, is that the entire bill now from them? So we only went over, only had.
6,300,
Okay, well,
something
that's great.
like
The
that.
change orders stayed under.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. And I thought we were going to do our budget amendments for this year tonight.
It's not on the agenda.
Okay, well, okay. All right, so we'll do them next meeting.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
Motion and seconded.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item, reports of committees and department heads. I do not have anything further tonight, except we do have the holiday party next Monday evening, starting at 5 o'clock over at the rec center. Come and take pictures, and then you can do a comparison next year when you get in the new rec center. So, public safety.
Nothing.
Public Works.
No report, Your Honor.
Director of Planning.
No report, Your Honor.
Ways and Means. Not present. City Attorney.
No report, Your Honor.
City Clerk.
No report, Your Honor.
Excise Commissioner. Not present. Library.
No report.
Municipal League, nothing to report. Historical Society.
No.
No closed meeting. Any new business? Oh, domestic and partner benefits is Alderman Nguyen?
No,
or-
Alderman Robertson.
Alderman Robertson? Oh, go ahead.
Did I do that?
That's right. You sent, no, I'm sorry. Keith sent out an email.
Right, I brought that in.
Right.
I just thought we should get up to date on that.
Well, do we need to adjust anything in our, I mean, we really don't have, this doesn't really affect us directly right now.
It does not, it has not been incorporated into our benefits.
Right, but it's really an adjustment that loggers will make in the way, right?
Right.
But do we have to do anything?
I don't believe so.
I think it's the way the plan is administered. And this is what we did to the police and firemen's pension fund about 6 or 8 months ago.
So if loggers makes it in general for their entire
Right.
plan, then we would follow suit.
Right, and I think that's who this was directed at those plan managers, but
Would
we'll
that
find
include
out.
health insurance coverage and things like that, or not?
Well, now you're broadening it
Right.
from just retirement.
This
So
was,
you wanted-
this was specifically towards retirement.
That's not how I meant it to be.
Oh, okay.
You wanted
Any
to cover all
benefits.
city benefits.
Any and all benefits, right.
Right.
Okay. Can we look at, to see what other organizations are doing, both private and public?
Would Slate have an overall, like loggers? Or
It
is
would have to
individual?
be municipality specific.
Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, and I don't know what the industries are doing, to tell you the truth.
It'd probably be best if we got some comparison information.
Right, I believe that there might be 1 or 2 municipalities that are seriously looking at something like this, so we can reach out to them
That'd be
and
great.
see what they're doing.
Yeah, it is something that we need to take a look at. Okay, thank you. Any other new business? Alderman Leahy?
The Ward 3 meeting for the month of December will be taking place on Tuesday night, December the 30th at 7 p.m. up here in the council room. And Your Honor, are we having a meeting on the 15th?
Yes.
So that is our next regular scheduled board meeting.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. If anybody'd like to, do we have any old business? Why did we not have that on there? All right, I'm finished. Okay. Do we have, anybody like to address the board? Please come forward and give us your name and address.
Denise Seving again, and I'm just respectfully asking again, Mr. Leahy, why you require residents to email you at your employer's email address rather than your home or Brentwood's email address. I'm just curious as to why we were required to do that when it doesn't seem to be a best practice. And then secondly, respectfully, I ask Bola and Justin if you can provide us with updates on some of the miscellaneous open items that you have, or at least provide us when a time that we can contact you and touch base with you and talk about that. And then listening to what you were sharing, Maureen, about some of the experiences that you had, and I know other people that have run for alderman and for mayor have been exposed to some of the mean treatment and in the campaign issues. I would suggest that maybe the city take a very proactive approach, that if anybody is found to be involved with that they prosecute. I mean, that's just, we shouldn't be discouraging good talent and people that are interested, that they have to be fearful of what happens to them if they try to run for office. And I think it shouldn't be taken lightly if that's happening. I think that's not right.
I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.